don't even know where to begin. Welcome back to the David Land podcast. I believe this is episode 12. At least that's what I titled it. I guess Kyle will have to edit that out if that's incorrect information, but I think I got it right. Episode 12 of the David Land podcast. The last time we came to you guys, we were sitting on the balcony of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway Pagoda talking about Graham Rahal getting bumped from the Indy 500. My, how things have changed in a month. Kyle, what have you done the past, month and change?
Well, first, let's just start on. I lost the train of thought there, but
Off
yeah,
to a rousing start.
Oh, okay. Let's just explain why we've kind of been gone. We'll get into that when we talk about what you've been doing. But let's just say David was gone for 2 weeks, and we were supposed to do one after the 500, but the 500 ended. We got back, and it was like, no, sorry guys. Yeah, we're gonna watch the Coke 600, and we're gonna sleep.
Am I gonna give the real answer to that? I also have the other answer is that David was a little grumpy after the Indy 500.
Yeah. We also, the way the 500 ended, we were all just like, I thought about the red flag so much that you could see smoke coming out of my ears. I just there came a point where I was like, I can't think about this anymore because I'm just gonna go crazy.
But I should have brought out my Joseph Newgarden diecast. Yeah. I was big brain. I not only bought one of those little 164s, a Newgarden's car, not for any particular reason, but mainly just because it was like new and different, and I thought it was going to be valuable. Oh boy, it's valuable. So yeah, I should have put that on the desk. Oh well, I didn't think about that.
But yeah, we missed after the 500. David was gone for 2 weeks, and then we were gonna be back last week, and then scheduling sucks, and then here we are. So it's a month later. We're back. I have been the week after the 500. I went to Newcastle for the Stars Championship for Kurt Chaser, and so I went from Indiana to home, back to Indiana. And then the week after that, I went to Utah, which was a lot of fun. I really enjoy Utah. I need to go back to that part of the country on like a vacation because, every day we were there, we'd go out to the mountains for like 2-3 hours of hiking. That's something, hiking through the mountains is something I learned that I could do and just have a vacation and pack a sandwich and just be out in the mountains for like 8 hours. Every breath of air that you take, you feel like you're just like coming back to life. Like it's just so pure. I don't know. That Utah was amazing. And then the week after that, we were in, I believe that would have been USBKS back at Newcastle. Unless I had a week off. I had a week off. Yes, I had a week off. I went to Mid-Ohio for some go-kart racing that weekend. Not working, but went to go see go-kart racing anyways. And then we were in Newcastle for USBKS. David was there.
I was there. I chased
He worked
geese.
for Kart Chaser. He interviewed some geese.
Asked them about what they thought about Paul Tracy winning the 2002 Indy 500.
Yeah, the geese didn't want to talk.
They didn't want to talk. Yeah, they knew something. They had the tapes. They know something. They had the receipts.
And then last weekend, I was at an IndyCar race in Mid-Ohio, and David wasn't. So
correct.
That now we're caught up to speed. Well, not on the news, just on us.
David,
what have you been doing?
I went to the 24 Hours of Le Mans. I did that the day after the Indy 500.
2 days.
2 days. Well, I mean, let's be honest here. Memorial Day. I mean, let's just talk about May for a second. I feel like we need to tie the bow on this.
Mm-hmm.
Number one, I just want to give, because I tried to give as much credit to everyone who helped on the channel as I could during the month of May. But I want to say it again, especially because Kyle's here. Kyle did an exceptional job working with us in the month of May. He actually was the person who not only edited those history segments that were so popular, he wrote the first draft of each of those scripts, which was extremely helpful. And I thought it turned out really well. I thought the whole month of May, I mean, you guys saw the 3D models that Joe and Gavin worked on. But just the whole thing came together, and I was really proud of the work that we did. I thought it was just, when you look at it and you think about it, and I got to be, I don't want to say this too strongly, but I like to pay attention, especially in May, because it's such a competitive environment and everybody is putting out their best work. Um, as far as I could tell, at least on YouTube, behind NBC, we were number one for Indy 500 coverage in terms of like engagement, views, um, everything. So that was really gratifying that we were able to get to that level. And I mean, we are not on a, I mean, you want to talk about a budget? We are on a shoestring budget doing that. And the workload that the team put together was, I mean, incredible stuff. So um, now that I've gotten that out of the way, the result of that hard of work during the month of May means that everybody is just completely dead on their feet the minute the checkered flag flies for the 500 and we get the last video done. And so my genius idea, well, it wasn't necessarily my genius idea. I was the dissenting voice in the group that did go to Le Mans to do this, but the rest of the group decided that they wanted to also go to Monaco because everyone who was going to the 24 Hours of Le Mans on my trip had gone to the Indianapolis 500. So the idea was we were going to do the Triple Crown of auto racing. Although we weren't going to see racing in Monaco, we could at least see the track, in pretty much race configuration. But to do that, we had to fly out the Tuesday after the Indianapolis 500. So we got Memorial Day. I barely slept because the minute I got to sleep, and the good news is it was a very nice wake up. I got to go have breakfast with Joe and his dad, but boy, they're early risers in Pennsylvania, and that doesn't. If you know me, I'm generally not an early riser, especially when I've been sleep deprived for a month. So pretty much went to France on not a lot of sleep. We did go to Monaco. I will say this: Monaco was incredible, by the way. The Principality of Monaco is a cool place. There's a museum with all the prince's cars, including, I mean, probably more Formula One cars than I've seen in one place ever in my life. But we ate Steak and Shake in turn one at Monaco. I finally got to try Orangina, which I've heard so many good things about. Taking 2 years of French class in high school, actually got to try it and liked it so much that I have a case of it sitting in my fridge that I brought home from France. But Monaco was awesome. The thing that's not awesome, and this is just the American part of me coming out, is public transportation. Didn't like the trains, didn't like the buses, didn't like the subways. And I got to, when I lived in New Jersey, I got to experience New York City a lot, and I didn't like it then, and I don't like it now. But
What didn't you like about the trains? Because I've always thought in the U.S., and this is still, no matter what you say here, I'm still gonna kind of disagree with you and continue my point. But I think like trains, like the way that you guys were able to go from Monaco to France, and like just transportation in general in Europe, like I wish we had that in the U.S. I wish I could just get on a train and go to Indy. Like I didn't have to drive 4 hours.
Okay.
I wish I could just get on a train and just have a quick little shot to Indy.
So that's, in concept, it works. And actually, the train system itself in France is a lot better. I mean, it's so much better than the U.S. You can't even believe it. Like they have 200-mile-an-hour high-speed trains. I mean, I have gone 200 miles an hour. I've gone 200 miles an hour twice in my life on the ground. Obviously, we're not talking about planes here. Once was with Mario Andretti in the two-seater, and the second time was in an effing train in France. So that's cool. The issue with trains and the issue with traveling long distances on the trains, the actual short hop from Nice, where we were staying, to Monaco was not bad. The problem with the trains there was they were overcrowded. It was standing room only. I mean, we were crammed in there like sardines. That was not a fun experience. If the train had been only the seating, if they only let enough people, every person one per a seat, that would have been great. But that was bad. And then on the longer distance 200-mile-an-hour trains, those are great because you get your own seat. But the issue is, if you're traveling with luggage, there's not a lot of places for luggage. And if everyone else on the train is traveling with luggage, you no longer have a place to put your luggage. And there were at least 2 times in our train travels where we had to either sit with our luggage on our laps or have the luggage like in the aisleway and just being the worst ugly Americans of all time. I was so embarrassed at points. But I will say this, and I said this in my video: all the folks in France were just the most welcoming. I mean, because there's this stereotype. I mean, we've all heard it in the U.S. that the French don't like Americans. I'm now convinced that's just because all the snot-nosed kids going to Paris in 8th grade and seeing nothing else of France and being obnoxious, ugly Americans as, little snot-nosed 14-year-olds who can't speak any French and are rude. Of course, you're going to get a bad experience in France. If you actually go, and go in with a good attitude and be genuine and kind, and if you can speak a little bit of French, it also helps, as I found out. But the French people were just awesome. They were so awesome, and it was, obviously we learned things like you should definitely rent a car, even if you think the train's going to be more efficient. The minute one of them's delayed, you're screwed in travel. But if you rent a car and you just go around France, it's an amazing experience. We got to go to Rouen Les Essarts. I'm trying so hard to say that right, and I'm still not saying it right. But that was a Grand Prix track in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. The last race that they ran there was in 1968 for Formula One. That was the last time they held the French Grand Prix there. Unfortunately, there was a fatal accident there, and I can't remember exactly. I think it was, I'm going to get this wrong. I think it was Joe Schlescher, but I can't remember exactly who it was. I'm sure the chat will tell me. I probably got that wrong, but they decided the track was too dangerous, and Formula One stopped going there, but they kept racing for 30 years after that. In fact, the Formula 3 French Championship race there a year before that track actually was ultimately closed and turned back into just public roads. And they smashed the Formula One record by like 15 seconds, which is just like, and if you watch the footage, there's footage on YouTube of that track in the 90s. And it's the most bat bleep crazy track because it's just like guardrail and then trees. And there's like carbon fiber Formula 3 cars running around there at 150 miles an hour. If you've ever seen the movie Grand Prix with James Garner in it, that was the closest I've ever felt to that. I mean, if you can go to a 60s era Grand Prix track, especially one that's abandoned, freaking do it and walk it, because imagining Jim Clark and Graham Hill and, all these amazing drivers going around there in the Formula One cars of the day is just like a mind-bending experience. I mean, it really is. You really feel connected to the history at a track like that. I haven't even talked about Le Mans, by the way. Not even.
Keep going. I need to grab my piece of France right next to me while you keep going.
Okay. Yes. GP laps confirmed, because I figured he would. It was Joe Schlescher. They actually put a chicane around the area where he died, and I actually took a piece of the concrete because they were actually tearing up part of that chicane while we were there. There was actually construction going on. What was crazy about going to Rouen was they actually closed the roads because they were doing some like construction on a small part of the track, but you could just walk around the construction vehicles, and no one yelled at us and no cops told us to not do it. So we just pretty much walked around this empty 60s racetrack. And that's an experience. And I didn't even go to all the French tracks that I could have gone to. Just in France alone, I think there's 3 or 4 abandoned Formula One tracks. There's Clermont-Ferrand, which still does host a racetrack or races. In fact, Sebastien Bourdais has the lap record on the current version of Clermont-Ferrand, but about half of the track is still public roads and accessible to the public. And then, of course, the one that everyone's seen is, and again, this is one that I don't necessarily know how to pronounce correctly, so I'll say it both ways. Reims or Rhymes. I'm not sure exactly how you say it. The Americans generally pronounce it Reims, which is, if you've ever seen a picture, if you Google search abandoned Formula One track, you'll probably see a picture of Reims. We didn't get to go there, but I'd love to go there. The other thing I will say now, transitioning to Le Mans, is what's so cool about Le Mans is you can actually drive on most of the track, including parts of the track that they don't use anymore. The Porsche curves are a relatively new part of Le Mans. They were added in the 70s. And there's actually a straightaway that the old Porsche 917s, in fact, if you watch the 1971 Le Mans movie with Steve McQueen, that's still the configuration of the track that you can still drive today. And you go through the Maison Blanche corner, and they still have the curbs from the 70s on the side of the road. I mean, it's really, I'm gushing, but that was such an incredible experience. And the 24 hours of Le Mans, it's the closest thing I've ever experienced in Indianapolis 500. They're very much sister races. I would say that Le Mans doesn't quite have the spectacle that Indy is. I still think Indy's, the best race in the world by far, and I don't think I'll ever change that opinion. But Le Mans is just, if you've gone to Indy and you liked Indy, figure out a way to get to France and go to Le Mans, because they are the two greatest races in the world by a considerable margin. I want to see a Formula One Grand Prix, particularly at Monza first, before I totally make that assessment. But yeah, I mean, I don't know necessarily what you want to know or what the listeners would like to know about my experience to Le Mans that I haven't talked about yet. But
I have two things. One, just personally, I'm very jealous that I didn't get to go this year. I actually was initially a part of the group that was gonna go, and then I had to. My job roles changed, and I had to be in Utah for the national race.
You had to be at Miller Motorsports Park. Uh-oh. We have lost Kyle. Did we lose me or did we lose Kyle?
Oh.
We are lagging big time.
Oh, we're back.
That was, yeah. Was that
All
me
right.
or was that you?
I don't know. It just kind of flashed for both.
Oh, okay.
On both. I don't know. Anyways, I didn't get to go to the centenary, but I will. My plan is to go to the 100th. Maybe I'll go before then, but the 100th running of that race is the number that's like, I will be there for that. I thought about it. And I was like, well, David was at the 100th Centennial Indy 500 and I wasn't. And I was at the 100th running of the Indy 500. So it all kind of comes together. It's got that's going to happen, which the 100th running's in like what, 9 years?
9 years from now. Yep.
9 years. Yeah. So I'm very jealous. My random question is, we said before you went to France, before you went to the 24 Hours of Le Mans, we go to Petit Le Mans every year. You've gone longer than me, but we've both said that, it's Petit Le Mans. So the name alone, that's kind of close-ish to like the American Le Mans. Now that you've actually been there, what are some of the, as far as like being at the track and in the race, even though one's a 10-hour?
There's some pre-race. The pre-race is similar. The crowd at Petit Le Mans, which is a great crowd for an IMSA race, doesn't even compare. I mean, it's not even close. I mean, the crowd at Le Mans was Indy 500 levels of freaking crowd.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just freaking crowded. But I think that Petit Le Mans does an amazing job. And in fact, in the movie Ford versus Ferrari, they used Road Atlanta as a stand-in Le Mans. So that tells you how close the circuits kind of are in philosophy, at least. I got huge Road Atlanta vibes, which is why I was vibing. Like I was totally vibing when we got down to Mulsanne Corner and kind of went further down the I guess we'll call it the Peter Dumbreck straight. I guess it's the run to Indianapolis, but everybody knows that straight for Peter Dumbreck, unfortunately. And just as an aside, I have met Peter Dumbreck before, and the only thing that went through my mind was, don't bring up 1999. But when you're just sitting in the trees and cars are screaming by you at 150 miles an hour, particularly the Van Wall and particularly the Garage 56, I was chilling. But at Road Atlanta at night, if you go down to the double apex hairpin, I can't remember exactly what the corner names are. I think there's 6 and 7, but I could be wrong on that. If you stand down there, either end of the straightaway, either the back straightaway or the straight heading down out of turn number 5, which I think is the one after at the bottom of the S's, that is as close as you can get to Le Mans from an on-track standpoint, standing out in the middle of the woods in the darkness, just seeing cars stream by. I think Sebring is probably the closest to the vibe the Le Mans track has from a sports car race perspective. But overall, the Indianapolis 500 is the closest thing I can get to the vibe that 24 Hours of Le Mans has.
See, I've never been to Sebring, so I guess Petit is the closest I can get to Le Mans right now. But anyways, again, I'm jealous, but like, I mean, I've tried to put this together to make myself feel better so many times, but you guys got to go and go through all the struggles and the hassles, so that when I join, when we go again, everything will be figured out, and I get to have a better time.
It'll be a fine oiled machine. I will say
I can
this:
just be with you guys, and y'all can tell me what to do. You already figured it out.
Well, there was a couple of things. So I don't speak much French at all, but I easily knew the most French of anybody in our group. So I always ended up being like C3PO. Like I'd always just hear people would scream at me like from like in the freaking Airbnb at one point. It was just like I was in a completely different room. They're like going, David, we need to speak French. It's like, which I didn't, like when someone's just going blah 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 blah, I can't understand a damn thing they're saying. But if they speak slowly and use small words, I can kind of understand and maybe speak a little bit back. But like, man, that was tough. And I will say the true negative about France is Paris. Don't go to Paris. Stay the hell out of Paris. And if you stay out of Paris and you just go into literally any other part of France, including the big cities like Nice, you'll have a great time. Just don't go to Paris. That's my word of advice today.
So final thing on Le Mans, I had to grab my little piece of France, even though I didn't go. My buddy Chris, that went with you guys, GT Rain on YouTube, is a legend.
Big shout out to Chris. Big ups.
He brought it in the bag. So this is a French bag, and he grabbed me one of the Michel Vaillants. Did I say that right?
I think you did. Yeah. You could also say Michael Vaillant.
Michael Vaillant.
Yeah, that's
not Michael though. That's Michel.
That's definitely Michel. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's the one on the Indy 500, which is pretty cool because he told me that this one in particular, and it is in English. That's a double ups, but this one in particular isn't going to be officially like out until the end of the year. This year, it was just out.
Is that true?
Yeah, that's what he told me.
Because we spoke to one of the artists. We didn't speak to the artist that wrote that book or did the art for that book, but he said they had released that already. Maybe the English version.
Yeah,
because I think the French version's been out for like 2 years, which I stupidly bought and then didn't realize they had an English version. And then so I have a French version and an English version of that particular book. But that's because I bought a few of the Michel Vaillant books and also some other.
When David came to work at Newcastle, and I read it pretty much immediately in the hotel room, and the whole thing, like, it's
like going home.
Yeah, it's two fictional characters racing in the 1966 Indy 500, and the whole thing, it felt like, even though I was reading it, it felt like watching Speed Racer, but it was actually taking place in the Indy 500. It's not just some fictional race. One thing I do want to show off, not to spoil it, if you can get your hands on them, because do it. Yep. That is Graham Hill in a swimming pool.
That's very of the time.
This thing is actual drivers in it as well as the fictional ones. Like the whole thing is just freaking amazing. So,
and that's the gimmick of Michel Vaillant. Every single comic book that they make of him, he is racing, and I guess they started it in like the 50s or the 60s, somewhere around there when comic books were really, really big. They started this comic book series, and every single comic has had him and his family team participating in these big races. Now, the Indianapolis 500 books, I understand, are newer. But I guess in the comics, and I got to be coy here about how I say this. In the comics, they've teased a potential IndyCar run, like a modern IndyCar run for Michel Vaillant. So I guess we'll stay tuned for that. But I think that would be really, really cool. And God bless America. Can they please translate all the books into English?
All of them.
Every single one.
Because I read this and I immediately was just like, I need the like modern Le Mans versions in English. Like now I need to see what those are. Like I need more than this. because now there's one in English that I know of, and I read it. I want to read more. That was really good. So, what were you gonna say?
Well, the good news is if they translated one into English. So what we'll say is if that's coming out later this year,
Mhm.
and when that comes out, buy the crap out of that.
Yeah.
Let's send a message so they make more of them.
No, I promise you. I know it's a comic book, but like I'm 21, and I was like sitting. I was amazed and fully into it. Like it's not a kid's thing. Like if you're into racing in general, no matter what age you are, you're gonna enjoy that. That's it's amazing.
Michel
Probably like,
Vaillant, reach out. David Land on YouTube channel, pushing to the
oh
moon
yeah,
here in the
to the moon.
US. Yeah. I will literally wear the Michael Valiant costume.
Yeah.
I'll dye my hair black. I'll do the whole thing. We are going to get this comic book going in the US. Okay.
Yes.
Let's actually talk about
Well, let's get to IndyCar. Start on IndyCar.
Okay, well,
IndyCar.
that's
Now.
good because that was the first. I should have put this up the entire time. We've missed a lot. But okay, Kyle is desperate to talk about Mid Ohio.
Oh, I thought we well,
desperate.
Let's recap first.
Okay,
Let's
what did we
recap,
miss?
do a little
What
bit
did
of
we miss?
Let's IndyCar recap. We talked about
IndyCar
France.
recap.
Talk about your. So Detroit happened. I guess this is kind of still Le Mans.
I fell asleep during qualifying.
You watched Detroit, and you watched it. What was it, like 9:00 at night?
It was awesome. It was primetime IndyCar.
Yeah, really quick. What was that like watching a daytime Detroit race at night? I've asked Chris about this. It sounds crazy.
It was evening because here's the thing about France. What I guess I didn't realize is that France is actually warmer right now than Indianapolis is. Like Indianapolis has had a very mild summer. France was hot and humid, which fine, fair enough. But with that comes the fact that the sun stays out way longer right now in France than it does in the US. Obviously, it's 4,000 miles of difference. They're later in a season than we are, I guess, technically, right? So a lot of it was kind of dusk when that race was happening. But yes, it was primetime IndyCar. We got to watch it on IndyCar Live, the streaming service that pretty much the rest of the world gets to watch IndyCar racing on. And it was commercial free. And what a great experience. Shame there isn't one of those options for people in the US.
So Detroit happens. That was a crazy race. A lot of argy-bargy. Alex Palou wins. But probably the biggest IndyCar news was a few days later when we find out Connor Daly is no longer a full-time IndyCar driver. Now we have heard a little bit, about maybe next year Connor was kind of on the outs and looking.
There was a lot of talk about that.
But happening middle of the season like that was a surprise.
Was it? I
mean,
I don't know. I think that my opinion, and I've had people argue with me on this, is that I kind of was under the impression that Connor's deal was I mean, everybody kind of knew it was in a precarious spot. But my impression was he had to have a good Indy 5 or a great Indy 5. He had a good Indy 500, but I think like a win or a podium at the Indy 500 or lead a lot of laps would have helped him, in my opinion. Now, I could be totally wrong about that, but the fact that he just had a good Indy 500, I think, kind of sealed his fate with Ed Carpenter Racing.
So they bring on Ryan Hunter-Reay, which is good for that team because they can Ryan can kind of figure out where they're at and try and help.
That was a bit of a shocker too, I thought.
Yeah.
Because
it was smart on their part.
My first impression was Linus. I thought Linus, because I think Linus was supposed to test for them or something.
Yeah.
Or
I was worried.
For them.
I was worried they were going to put Linus in that car because I feel like they needed like a Hunter-Reay. They needed a veteran, and then maybe next year you put in Linus. I think that could happen still, but I mean, I feel like Hunter-Reay going with a veteran, one that has a few more starts under his belt than Connor, that can kind of help Rinus. Because a good point that I heard was, Rinus VeeKay, when you look at it through his whole IndyCar career, he's never had that like older veteran teammate. He's never had that guy to lean off of except for Ed on the ovals. So to have somebody on the road courses that he can kind of lean on for advice that has years of experience beyond him, I mean, I felt like that was a good move. But what they do next year, what do you think?
Do you
think Bittenile is going to stay?
Yes. Yeah, it, I, the way it was explained to me, it's kind of similar to what happened with Zach Veach and Gainbridge,
Yeah,
where
pretty
the
much
sponsor,
identical.
yep,
Because Bitnile stayed on. They were still a sponsor for Connor when he went to Nitro Rallycross. So that
yes,
happened with Veach. Veach didn't just wear a Gamebridge helmet when he drove the Lexus. They were helping him out.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, I would expect that sponsor to stay along with Ed Carpenter Racing and stick with that team, and at the same time stick with Connor when they can. So, but I would think that the majority of that budget is probably going to continue to go to Ed. And so if that is a fully funded car, Ed's got the pick of the litter. He can go get whoever he wants. I'm curious if he goes for a veteran driver like a Ryan Hunter-Reay full time, if Ryan really impresses. And by the way, I'm really interested to see what Ryan does at Iowa for that team.
Yeah.
That was one track in particular that the Ed Carpenter Racing team really struggled um, at last year. And yet, Ryan Hunter-Reay is one of the most prolific drivers in the history of Iowa Speedway with Indy cars. So I'm curious what will happen there. And also looking at Ed and looking at what Ed and his goals are, Ryan Hunter-Reay would fit, especially when we're looking at qualifying at the Indy 500, qualifying well at the Indy 500, and racing at the front of the Indianapolis 500. And Ryan Hunter-Reay, let's just remind ourselves that if it was 1989, Ryan Hunter-Reay probably wins the Indy 500 under the caution flag this year for Ryan Reinbold Racing. A lot of people forget that he was leading when the first red flag came out. So I think that there's a very good argument to be made that Ryan Hunter-Reay stays at that team. But at the same time, there's a lot of kids, as you well know, coming out of Indy Lights that have full freaking budgets
Yeah.
and money burning a hole in their pocket and
I
are going to
think
be looking at places to go.
I think the other question to Hunter-Reay staying would be is Ryan does Ryan want to do that? Because like committing to half
He's
of the
doing it
season,
now.
well, committing to half a season to full one are two different things. If it does happen, I would probably be like an Elio, where it's like when he signs, it's not going to be like 10 more seasons of his career. It's going to be
Oh,
like
I don't think anyone has that
probably be like
expectation.
2 or 3,
Yeah,
maybe.
yeah.
But I mean, are you have anything else to say on that?
Well, I just don't think anybody, no one is expecting Ryan
Yeah.
Hunter-Reay is going to have some massive career resurgence, but I mean, he's still got it.
Yeah.
Like, still got it. So from my perspective, if you're Ed, why not? At
Sure.
least at the 500. Maybe you do a split deal where you put some inexperienced lights kid in for the money the rest of the season, but that doesn't help the team very much, does it?
No.
So yeah, from that perspective, experience wise, Ryan Hunter-Reay is the best available driver at the moment. Now, with silly season about to be what I think we expect it to be, the market's about to be flooded with experience. So is Ryan Hunter-Reay the best of the litter when we end up having a lot of drivers to choose from? I don't know. But I will say this. At the Indianapolis 500, Ryan Hunter-Reay, I think, is going to get a ride with somebody. He was too impressive with Ryan Reinbold not to get a ride somewhere. It just depends who it would be with. And I think Ryan Hunter-Reay and Ed Carpenter Racing would be a winning combination potentially at the Indy 500. And it would potentially help Renus VK significantly, in my opinion. And Ed, let's be honest, to have an Indy 500 winner with that kind of experience on that team, at least for that race. The rest of the season, you might sacrifice with an older driver. I just don't know. I don't want to be Ed Carpenter right now. I can tell you that. That's a tough. But then again, there's a lot of team owners that I wouldn't want to be in the shoes of right now because there's a lot of tough decisions being made right now.
So then another IndyCar race happens, a Road America. Yep. It was Road America, so it was always great. Will Power and Scott Dixon got in a kerfuffle, and then they kissed and made up, as they do.
Yep. Yeah, they're
Alex
big boys.
Palou wins.
They're big boys. They can flip each other off and shove each other and be just fine. Like it was great for the sport. Honestly, like I saw some comments that said, "That's not great." I'm like, "Are you kidding me, dude? Like, calm down." Like I want to see if they're going to be fine too, like if it's not going to carry forward into more like stupid stuff down the road, I am fine with two of the great legends of the sport like throwing hands and then
Yeah.
just like having a beer later. Like that's great.
It was
AJ and Mario did that, so why can't Will Power and Scott Dixon do
Will Power probably had the most AJ moment I think we've
it?
probably seen since AJ. Like the last person I can think of that like actually would like cause problems, not that will cause problems, but like do things.
Finish the problems, perhaps.
Yeah, which was Paul Tracy, but Paul Tracy was never really like AJ, like Paul
Paul
Tracy
Tracy was
was his
pretty
own.
close.
He was his own thing though. Will Power, that would like give him the bird, shoving him, probably gave him a nice earful.
What did he
That was
call
AJ.
Grosjean again? I can't remember. He
A
said
piece of crap.
A
piece of crap. He didn't cuss. He called him a piece of crap. That is the most AJ thing.
AJ cussed on TV quite a few times.
Yeah, but it was probably just damn.
AJ also didn't oh no. Have you ever seen the Jeff Andretti rant?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. He definitely said a few more things but I think that Will Power's rant, I mean, that was fantastic. I wish drivers would speak their mind more often.
So that was fantastic. But just like Mid-Ohio, Road America, all of the excitement really wasn't in the race itself. It was in the Saturday. Mid-Ohio, the race.
What? I thought the Road America race was good. What were you watching?
It was not like
it wasn't at Mid-Ohio, you biased ass.
It was about the same. It was about the same as Mid-Ohio is what I'd say.
I would agree with that. But I thought the Mid-Ohio race was fine.
But it's not that they were a bad race. I'm not saying they were bad. I'm just saying like, yeah, they were good IndyCar races, which is what Mid-Ohio and Road America were. They were good they were, but like, it's not Will Power and Scott Dixon were not shoving each other on race day.
Okay? Well, yeah, that would have been. I honestly
Simon
wonder.
Pagenaud wasn't flipping into the sand trap during the race.
Let me make a point.
The drama was really more on the weekend.
What moves the needle better? If that kind of stuff happens in practice, or
I think
if it
practice
during the race. Okay, so what are we complaining about?
I'm not complaining. I'm just saying that I'm just making the point. I'm just driving that home. The weekend was probably more dramatic than the actual race day, and Alex Palou dominates. I'm setting the trend early here that Alex Palou is freaking dominating right now.
If Rinus VeeKay hadn't crashed into him in the pits, he would have won literally every IndyCar thing from the Indy GP on, including just everything. The pole for the Indy 500, the Indy 500, and every race since May.
Yes. Yeah, by far. Like you said, we probably haven't seen this type of domination since Zanardi. My thought,
Sebastian Bourdais and Dan Weldon were two more that were brought up to me recently.
My thought during the Mid-Ohio race was I was just thinking, man, we're right back to the 10 car in the Dario Franchitti days. Which I don't even think Dario yeah, that's what it feels like.
Well, yeah, but is he going to stay? That's the big question, because and everyone's saying it, and I'm not the only one saying it. Like if he doesn't have a competitive Formula One seat, and we're talking like top 5 Formula One car, I mean, I get he could probably get paid going to Formula One. Okay, fine. If he makes $6 million going to Formula One, it makes sense. But, what is your legacy going to be? I'm going to ask the ESPN, pardon the interruption style question right there. Your legacy as Alex Palou could be one of the greatest IndyCar drivers of all time. We have seen ever since Jacques Villeneuve, every single IndyCar driver who has gone over to Formula One after winning championships has fared at best. You're looking at best being Juan Pablo Montoya, winning some races, but ultimately Max Verstappen's going to win every race, much like Michael Schumacher did in Montoya's time in Formula One. But if you look at Zanardi, did not have a good time at Williams, ended up back at IndyCar within 2 years. Cristiano D'Amato went to a Toyota team that was just not ready for prime time, and frankly never was. I mean, D'Amato never had a chance, was back in IndyCar, but at a worse team. Same for Sebastian Bourdais. He was at Toro Rosso at the exact right time he needed to be. Unfortunately, Sebastian Vettel was also there when Sebastian Bourdais was at Toro Rosso. So even if you get to the right team, if you have the wrong teammate, you're screwed.
Yeah. I mean, even, obviously Michael Andretti
Yep.
had,
Well, that's
the
the
wrong
obvious
teammate.
example. That's the
He had the
obvious
wrong
example.
teammate and another hot shoe coming in. But
Well, yeah, I mean, that was the big issue with Michael. There was a lot of issues with Michael, but
that's such an
but
easy
Ron Dennis
comparison too,
definitely.
because it's McLaren. How are you? How?
Well, but the Michael Andretti thing always gets brought up, and the Michael Andretti thing, like even Senna like stepped in at one point and told Ron Dennis to stop like screwing with Michael, and that's when Michael got the podium at Monza right before he got fired. I mean, Ron Dennis, it's made no secret he preferred Mika Hakkinen in that seat, and eventually he got what he wanted. That's the long and the short of it. Now, am I totally defending Michael's time in Formula One? No, I think Michael. There were efforts that Michael could have made that would have made his Formula One career easier on himself. But like at the end of the day, Michael should have stayed in IndyCar racing in '93. I mean, he's even on record as saying this himself. He would have probably won, if not every race, most of them in '93. And you think about where his car was in the '93 500 on the final restart. Nigel Mansell was driving it, if we remember, and Nigel was leading the race. He got completely smothered on the restart by Emerson Fittipaldi and Ari Leindijk. I guarantee you, Michael Andretti would not have let that happen.
Yep.
Like he would have rather crashed than let those guys by. So, Michael maybe would have won the 500 in '93, another championship. And we're talking about Michael as one of the greatest IndyCar. I mean, he is one of the greatest IndyCar drivers of all time, but we're like putting him in the AJ Mario conversation. If he stays in '93, he didn't. And that kind of hurt his legacy a little bit, in my opinion, as a
so,
driver.
so regarding Alex Palou, should we start getting ready to talk about Alex Palou being a 2-time IndyCar champion and 4 full-time seasons?
Yeah,
That's
I
just
mean,
incredible.
it's Alex Zanardi again. I mean, that's why I made the Zanardi comparison because, like, it took Palou one more season to win a championship than it did Alex Zanardi. But Alex Zanardi also started at Ganassi. If you look at Alex Palou, he's had almost the exact same career trajectory as Alex Zanardi. So he's going to end up. I think he's going to. I mean, let's think about the next race. It's Toronto. I'm pretty sure. What did Palou? I have to look this up. I think Palou was either. I think he was on the podium last year at Toronto, if I remember off the top of my head. No, he wasn't. He crashed because that was right after the whole the contract thing broke. Now I remember correctly. But I think Alex Palou could still have a good day at Toronto. I don't know if he's necessarily going to win, but why the hell would I bet against him at this point? Iowa, I think there's no reason why he can't be good at Iowa. I mean, Jimmy Johnson was absolutely stellar there last year, so why can't Alex Palou? All he has to do is have a decent enough championship here in the stretch run and just keep Dixon within his sights, and he's got it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm willing to say he's going to be a 2-time champion.
All right. So now I was at Mid Ohio and you weren't.
Yep.
So
You're going to keep reminding me of that.
I'm gonna go on my little rant, go on my
boy.
little talk about Mid Ohio.
Here he goes.
So as of the event itself, it was great as always, about the same. Mid Ohio added paving. They paved turn 1. They added some to the curbs. Because of that, camping prices went up. A lot of people weren't really happy about that. They went up from like $250 to like 400 and something. And I think a lot of people, I think camping was down this year, and the attendance might have been up or the same. But Mid Ohio was just a great event as always. The one complaint I do have right now about IndyCar at Mid Ohio is one, that it's on July 4th. I've argued this in my head a million times. If a race is needed on July 4th weekend, a part of me thinks it does, but it's just tough because it's like you need to have that date. You need to have that date long term, because something that I noticed in Mid Ohio is the first year they did it, I felt like attendance was a little bit down. I felt like camping was for sure down, and camping has been going down. Because when you think about it, when you have that date at the end of July for God knows how long, probably over 10 years from when they switched to July 4th, and then you move it to July 4th, people have their yearly traditions on July 4th that they'll have their cookout, they'll go see their family. You know, that they're not gonna a lot of the casual fans who aren't diehard IndyCar fans like us, they're gonna go and do their normal July 4th plans. They're gonna say, "Oh well, we're not going to the IndyCar race this year at Mid Ohio." So part of me felt like camping, and maybe the attendance. The attendance fell up, but it might have been the same. I felt like the event at Mid Ohio had a lot of growth for a few years before it went to July 4th, and well, pre-COVID. Um, and then the July 4th date, I don't know. Part of me thinks that it might want to go back to the end of July. I don't know. I for sure camping I think is down. There's a lot of more empty lots than I've seen. I think it goes down every year. And camping is what kind of makes that event what it is. David, you've been there. I've
Oh yeah.
gone on rides to the campground. It's a great freaking time. It's like the only IndyCar race I know where the drivers on Saturday night after qualifying literally will just flock to the campgrounds on golf carts and walk around and sign things for fans. And literally, I saw a few drivers just hanging out at campsites with fans for like a 30 minutes to an hour, and then they'd leave. Like they were just hanging out on Saturday night. It's the only IndyCar event that I've been to that they'll just go out and do that for the fans, and that's pretty cool. But yeah, I don't know. The July 4th date to me is an interesting one.
Well, and the big thing now is that like clearly that Chicago NASCAR race is
Oh,
going to
yeah.
be
And
that's
that's
going
not far away. I thought about that too. I feel like it might have went down again because of that.
yeah.
And it went down. I can guarantee you it went down when NASCAR went to Road America. I
Hmm.
guarantee it, because Road America for the NASCAR race, the first year they did that, was filled to the brim. All the our NASCAR YouTuber friends will tell us because they were there. It was packed, and that is, I've driven there a few times. That's like a 6-hour drive. People would go, and people who just went to Road America for the IndyCar race probably went to Mid Ohio for the IndyCar race as well if they have the time. I mean, that I feel like for sure the Road America NASCAR race took away from Mid Ohio, a race that at the end of July is packed. It is just campground full, area full. So I feel like the one idea I did have is maybe Road America might be down for this, just to give the finger to NASCAR and put the Road America IndyCar race on the 4th.
I don't think that would. I mean, I think the big thing with a 4th of July race is that this NASCAR Chicago thing has proven one thing to me is that you need a made for TV event
Yeah.
on the 4th of July. And, you know, this is going to be made a meme, isn't it? But I'm going to make the suggestion. I'm going to put it out in the universe. Why not Michigan?
Yeah.
500-mile race on July 4th. If you're going to compete against NASCAR and they're going to do what you do, which is a street course, why don't you do what they do and do a super speedway?
That's a good point.
But the problem is now, especially because the Chicago race did like an Indy 500 TV rating, is that you are now like anything IndyCar does on 4th of July is going to be USA Network or Peacock. Like they're not getting on NBC.
Mm.
So like, man, it's tough. And you mentioned the attendance, and from a track perspective, I mean, I thought it looked good on TV.
It did. It
I
did.
thought it looked fine.
I feel
But
like the event as a whole was down as far as camping goes. I think attendance was about the same.
okay, but the camping, that's like those are like the whales.
Yeah.
Those are the big money spenders, and
Yeah.
if they're not there, that's a problem. So,
Yeah.
I don't know. That's a tough because like here's the thing with IndyCar. Like at some point, you just have to kind of accept your lot in life and not run scared from NASCAR or the NFL or anything. You just kind of got to do your own thing, swim in your own stream, and not worry about it so much. Because like if you just overthink, like, oh my God, Chicago street race just did 4 million people on TV. What are we gonna do? Yeah, but at the same time, like I get like I'm going to go against the narrative here. I know, shocker. There was probably there was not 100,000 people at Chicago. Okay, let's. And I know no one's saying that. Everyone's just kind of being obtuse and saying great crowd. The crowd, I think they pre-sold 19,000 tickets, and there was probably a great walk up. Let's be honest, probably 10,000 more people on a street course. 30,000 people looks like there's 200,000 people there. It looks great on TV, which is why a lot of people run street course races. Now the attendance in Chicago, that's not going to matter one damn bit if you can get 4.5 million people to watch it on TV. But I would argue that there was probably a similar amount of people at Mid-Ohio comparatively to Chicago. I don't know if there was necessarily like a huge swing one way or another in terms of attendance. I'm sure Chicago probably had more, but it was probably a lot closer than maybe you would think. So I don't know. I think at some point you kind of have to just like say, look, NASCAR is going to do what it's going to do, and the NFL is going to do what it's going to do, and we need to just do our own thing and build our own events. And so there's date equity now with Mid-Ohio on the 4th. Do you really want to move it back to late July after already going through the effort to move it to July 4th? I don't know.
Yeah. I'd have to see like actual stats on like what it's doing, but just from my point of view, I would say it's going down, and if it keeps going down, then maybe. Because I mean, I wish they would have moved it sooner. I wish
you don't want to do the Milwaukee thing though and just move it every single year, because that's how you absolutely kill it.
Yeah, for sure. So I don't know. The other thing about Mid-Ohio is
we haven't even talked about the race, by the way.
Like I said, they repaved turn 1, and the plan is to repave the rest of it for next year. Let's talk about the race now, because this kind of goes into it. The race, like in Mid-Ohio fashion, did not have a lot of passing. They could pass.
They were like 3 wide on the main straightaway at one point.
And maybe the new repave will help, because the pavement's so freaking old at Mid-Ohio, and it just felt like all the passing was going into turn 2, and there was almost nothing into turn 4, because they probably didn't want to use up their push to pass because they were fuel saving, which is another problem. That's going to be my last point. But
I know what you're going to say, because you make this point every single year.
Oh yeah. At the end, everybody was getting terrible runs out of the turn 2, and could not get a run down the straightaway to pass into 4, which is the normal passing zone, unless you were using push to pass. So maybe the repave will help. But I mean, they're going to do the repave, and this is going to go against everything that I stand for, but I challenge the people of Mid-Ohio, people doing the repave, to change something.
Whoa.
I don't have the change.
Is that a bigger media center? Are they going to pave the parking lots?
Yeah. Okay, no, they need to do that. But like, I love Mid-Ohio, and like I think it's perfect the way it is as a drive, like to drive around. I love the layout. Literally,
Twitter would disagree with you on that one, Kyle.
My go-to thing is just to bring up iRacing and do a test session in Mid-Ohio and an IndyCar. Like I'll just do that all day for fun. So, but you have to improve passing somehow. And like this is such a classic circuit that hasn't changed, and I would hate it. But at the same time, like I challenge them to change like one corner, do something to help passing. Just one, like it doesn't have to be huge. Whether it's changing a corner, I don't know. I don't have the fix. I just challenge them because there's people way smarter than me that could figure this out.
Well,
the only thing I wouldn't touch that they probably, because the thing that they would do is they would probably turn 4 into like a 90-degree corner with a bunch of runoff, like an F1 style thing. But like
they might do that.
It just feels like,
I wonder what the Pagano crash is going to have them thinking.
Oh no, it would cost them way too much money. They're already.
So you don't like? So let me tell you my big spending idea on Mid-Ohio. Because honestly, I made a point last night about street courses. You might know what I'm about to say. That I always complain on street courses that the start finish line and the pit lane are not on the same part of the track.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe what they should do is move the pit lane to the exit of turn 1, move the camping to where the old pit lane is, and then put a new pit lane on the exit of turn one, what currently is turn one, and then turn the keyhole into turn one with a proper pit lane with garages and all that.
You're thinking the other way, because then you would literally have like the pit lane on an island in the middle of the track.
No, on the other side, on the left side.
Oh,
Yeah, on
okay.
on the left side.
Turn that into like the.
Yeah. That's David's suggestion to improve Mid Ohio. Big media center, bigger than IMS's, carpet, air conditioning, millions of seats. That would be and catering. That would be amazing.
Yeah.
Catering by Chipotle. that's my suggestion.
Yeah.
But I don't know what that would do to improve the racing product, though.
It just feels like every single passing zone has a bad like run up to it. Like you go into everywhere to like turn one, I feel like you're in dirty air and it's hard to stay close for your passing zone into turn two. Maybe you change turn one, but like I said, the whole track's awesome.
I've got an idea.
I don't want to be the guy who says the change because I love all of it, but I mean,
I've got an idea.
I challenged him to make one change to the track.
I've got an idea. Some dude has given me a great idea. Do you know what you do, Kyle? You still have, we're going to still have the Mid Ohio race, but the Mid Ohio race could take place at the Burke Lakefront Airport, and then you'd have as much passing as you could possibly want.
That's true.
I just say, just do, this is a concept that I think I would like to see IndyCar explore. I don't know how they would do it, but why don't they just like take an area over for a month? Why not have like a month of June in Ohio with like a Mid Ohio race and then a Cleveland race?
Yeah.
I don't know. Idea. And then you could do Road America and Mid Ohio or Road America and Milwaukee and just make that like the month of cheese or something like that.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's just an idea. That's me thinking. That's me thinking out loud. And sometimes that's dangerous. But boy, oh boy, playing on Automobilista 2 and running the modern Indy cars at Cleveland. What a great race that would be. God, that would be okay. All right. I've said my piece. I've said it.
I am scared that I put into the universe an idea that would change, that would like entirely ruin Mid Ohio. But anyways,
I don't know what they could do. Like
I just feel like there's just like one thing that they could figure out to do that would just make it easier to pass in 1 to 2 corners. Like
you cut all the trees. You pave you take out. You extend the straightaway down where turn 4 is. Go off into the trees or whatever. And have it just like go downhill and just extend the straightaway and then have a 90-degree corner. That's how you'd have passing.
Yeah, just make it
And then you cut off like it'd be that whole like carousel section.
Okay, I challenged them to do it without changing turn 4, for the love of God.
That's the only place they can pass.
No, they can pass in 2, but it's just like I feel like you could.
I feel like they just run into each other when they try to pass each other in 2. Didn't someone barrel roll trying to pass somebody in 2?
The point is that there's passing zones in 2 and 4. You could do something to another corner of the track to make it maybe easier to follow or maybe easier to get the passes done in those 2 corners. If that makes sense.
Do you know what I like about the YouTube chat? I just want to say this real quick. They haven't changed it to the damn @Twitter copy thing that they're doing. God, that's nice. YouTube, get your head out of your butt. Don't do that Twitter crap. Good Lord. I'll get like rate limited or something. For the love of God. Okay. Have we talked about the race? We haven't even talked about the Mid Ohio race.
All right. Last point. The race is 80 laps. It used to be 90 laps. Outside of the 2 COVID races that were 75. When it was 90 laps, you could do the race in a 2-stop strategy. It's kind of like Barber. If you remember Barber, you had guys on 2 stops, some on 3.
Good race.
Three could push. That's what Mid Ohio would be if the race was 90 laps. But instead, it was 80 laps, which is a pretty easy 2-stop with saving. We know how great IndyCar races become when there's fuel saving involved. When you make it 80 laps, it makes it very easy. 90 laps, it's possible. We had to save more, which would make the 3-stop strategy more viable. There were only 2 drivers on Sunday who did the 3-stop strategy. It was Pato O'Ward and Santino Ferrucci. We saw Pato's race ended. He was 8th, and Ferrucci was nowhere to be found. Everybody else went on the 2-stop strategy. And not to mention, there was a yellow that hurt it that made it even easier to do 2 stops. So maybe make the race 95 laps. But the race was 10 laps shorter than it needed to be. So it was almost like they knowingly went into the race knowing that it was going to be boring. Like dear God, it's a track that you can't pass on, and you're going to make it you're going to make it a fuel saving race by making it 80 laps.
Correct.
What am I missing? Like what were we expecting to happen here?
Well, that's something that has been brought up, and I want to give a shout out to the off track with Hinch and Rossi deal, because they brought this up, and I think it's a great suggestion for other races, but most importantly for the Indy 500, because I think one of the big things that we can compare Mid Ohio and the Indy 500 to is that they have both turned into total fuel save forefests.
Yeah.
One thing you can do is shrink the capacity of the fuel tank or increase it if there's room in the chassis. You could do that too. And frankly, at the Indy 500, I think running with more fuel would be more exciting because less pit stops would mean longer fuel runs, more tire fall off, more exciting race, more strategy opportunities, all this stuff. But you want to try to encourage the cars and teams to run hard the entire race. You want to do your best job to try to do that. If you can incentivize that, the racing will take care of itself. And I think that's a big problem with IndyCar on a lot of tracks in the modern era is not necessarily that they can't race or they can't pass. It's that they choose not to because they have to hit a fuel number. And especially in this era of things not changing, we've been running with the same engine formula, the same fuel capacity, the same blah, 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 blah for 12 years now. And more often than not, especially the Indy 500, because the distance will never, ever change of that race. Hopefully, pray to God it doesn't. You're always going, if you run the same, even the same body kit, which by the way, I guess Will Power finally let it slip. He's the first person I've heard say it publicly that the body kit for the IndyCar will change next year. Bigger wings, bigger side pods is what he said on Connor Daly's podcast. But when the car doesn't change for 3 years, everybody figures it out in the first 2 years. And then by the time you get to 2023, everyone's just sitting in a line saving fuel. That's not very exciting. Same thing with Mid-Ohio. Even if you change like the laps and fuel capacity each year, you could really mix the race up. Even if we can't have true innovation anymore, the rules makers should throw challenges and curveballs at the engineering side of the teams to make the racing more interesting. I think that's what we're going to see at Gateway this year. Not just the fact that they're running alternate tires, but the fact that the alternate tires are something new, something that we haven't had in IndyCar racing since the tire wars of the 90s, where there's 2 different tire compounds out on the racetrack at the same time. That's going to make for a compelling weekend because we have no freaking clue what's going to happen.
Yeah.
There's no notebook. We need to, in racing, you need to have more notebook tossing. Throw that mother bleeper out. Speaking of, this is a great transition. NASCAR in Chicago. You want to talk about a notebook toss? This is a notebook toss. This was the notebook toss of all time. I've already said my piece on the race. I think the big talking point, and I'll just bring it up before I'll kind of give the floor to Kyle, is 4.5 million people watched this thing. That's only 100,000 people, give or take, off of what the freaking Indy 500 TV rating was. It's the biggest auto race on NBC outside of the Indianapolis 500 since 2017, the NASCAR Cup Series finale. Wow. So I guess, Kyle, you were at Mid-Ohio, but at least judging by your Twitter, you watched the Shane Van Gisbergen, which is apparently a hard name to say for some reason.
Yeah.
But the Shane Van Gisbergen spanking at Chicago. I guess just kind of go off with your thoughts, maybe talk about some of the points I made in my video, but mainly just, whatever you want to say.
Man, my first reaction in NASCAR Chicago this weekend was not good because
Agreed. Yeah.
Because you would think it was kind of sad to see that, like, you would think that people thought that this was like the first street race that has ever happened. It was like at some
It's not
point
even the first NASCAR street race, but
you would just look at the internet and you'd be like, man.
NASCAR also invented the safer barrier and fuel injection and the Hans device. I mean, I think we've realized that at this point.
Yeah. But I mean, and then it made me even more sad when people didn't know, which I mean, I guess it's fair if you're just a NASCAR fan, but it's like, man, you don't know Shane Van Gisbergen or how to say his name, and it's like, oh.
That's why it was such poetic justice that he won that race. I was like, you guys are putting that in the universe by screwing his name up every single lap.
Because I mean, I will say this: if you're just a NASCAR fan and you don't like watch at least like highlights or like have seen V8 Supercars, which I guess it's not called, it's just called Supercars now, but
I still call it V8 Supercars. I also called the Craftsman Truck Series the Craftsman Truck Series up until the point it was called the Craftsman Truck Series again, and then I started calling it the Camping World Truck Series.
Like, but Supercars is just like the same. Like now, obviously, they're like the same cars, but like they're faster and they race on road courses, and it's all Australian. Like, come on, guys, come on! Like, at least watch highlights or like look at clips on Twitter of it. Like what I've seen mostly this weekend is that people had like no idea. And Marcus freaking Ambrose used to be a NASCAR driver and won races.
That was also a name they couldn't say. Marcos Ambrose, they would say all the time. And I'm like, how can you not say Marcus? It's Dave Marcus is a NASCAR driver that you can say the name of. I don't know.
And then everyone like, it was shocking to see like Shane Van Gisbergen win, but when
I called it.
When Marcus Ambrose came in a NASCAR, he was really freaking good. He won a lot of. Everybody forgets. Not only did he win 2 Cup races, a little bit later on, he won a lot of freaking nationwide races. Or I guess you'd call it Busch races, but they were nationwide races at the time he won it, by the way.
Right.
But he won a lot of nationwide races. He won 2 Cup races. And probably, well, I guess they would have been, never mind. But he was another supercar guy who immediately came in on the road courses and was good. Yeah, everybody forgets before he won in 2011, he was also he was really fast when he first came in. So, I mean, it's like, it happened. And it was surprising that it actually happened because these things, you want them to happen. There's like an opportunity for them to happen, but it never actually comes together and happens, and it did. So that was cool. But when you really look at it, it's not that surprising. Like, it's not.
No.
It's very awesome, and I'm glad that it actually did happen and nothing got in the way of it. Like some dumping.
They tried. Oh boy, they tried.
Yeah. But
I'm surprised they didn't call the last restart a double file restart just out of like I was so expecting that. I'm like, don't do it. I'm like, don't do it.
Like, especially like if you've seen Supercars highlights, you watch Supercars and like you know that this like could have happened. Like, come on. But yeah, it was cool. The layout, I wish it was IndyCar usable. The only reason I say it would not be is the barrier in turn 1 that connects to the other straightaway. There's like, they come together and there's no real runoff there. I wish so. Yeah, maybe IMSA could go there as well, but because like in street racing,
that's supposedly happening, by the way.
Yeah, because in street race, like street track terms, I don't think it was that bad of a layout. I thought it was pretty good. I think that the turn, the 3 and 4, where Shane Van Gisbergen made that awesome over under, that's a great set of corners. Like that's actually flowing, even though most of the track on paper is just 90-degree corners, which is kind of boring as far as street circuits are they go. But like when you compare it to Detroit this year, I think it's better than Detroit. So
oh yeah, oh god, come on, Detroit, the new Detroit track, and this shouldn't even be in remotely the same conversation. Not even close. Not even close. The Chicago street race, the track itself, I will 100% defend. That's a legit racetrack. Legit racetrack.
Yeah. So I wish IndyCar could go there, but Yeah, successful. Almost wasn't, thanks to Mother Nature. But what would they have done? Like, how mad would the city of Chicago have been? If it goes to Monday, no matter how the race or the TV rating goes, do you think this race gets a second year?
Man, I'm confused. I'm curious about it still. I'm very interested to hear what the city has to say about the event. Because what's Chicago going to say about 4.5 million people watching it on TV?
Yeah.
Will Chicago look at that and say, those people are all going to come in tourism in our town? Or are they going to go, oh my God, all those people are going to come for the race next year? We are not prepared for this. I don't want it. I don't know if Chicago, like, because like the thing with NASCAR is they're still looking at alternate street circuits, at least according to Adam Stern. And I think someone, I don't remember who it was, I did see the comment that said the TV rating is the worst thing that could have possibly happened here, because the TV rating is so good that even if Chicago does get a second year, or perhaps we should start saying when Chicago gets a second or third or fourth year, NASCAR is going to overdo it with the street courses. I mean, that's what I warned in my video last night. I'm like, good God, please don't do, like,
Yeah.
go against every feeling in your heart about doing what I know you're gonna do, because I know you, because you're NASCAR. Let this be a crown jewel. Let this be special. Because you're not going to get 4.5 million people on the freaking Chicago race if there's 15 other street circuits on the damn calendar. Ah!
Yeah.
Makes me want to tear my hair out because I can see it coming. I can see that train. It's heading for the cliff, and there's nothing I can do to stop it going off of it. You have a great thing. Shane Van Gisbergen, because he dominated that race, and because they did single file restarts, no freaking stage cautions, and Shane Van Gisbergen drove that freaking car better than anybody else. He became a household freaking name in this country, became a star instantly, probably got himself a couple $1 million NASCAR contract the minute he steps out of a supercar. That doesn't happen in a not crown jewel race. And yet here we are. You guys are immediately going to oversaturate the market with NASCAR street races. Please don't do it. Okay. Okay.
I really like the idea that I saw on Twitter that somebody said, I hope they don't overdo the street course thing, and I hope they actually go to different street circuits every year. I think that would be cool.
That's a logistical nightmare.
I think keeping it in Chicago is going to be tough, because we know how tricky politicians are. They don't care.
And let's be honest, like, outside of the race and the TV, like the exciting race, which by the way was cut by 25 laps, so it wasn't even the full race we were supposed to see.
Yeah.
Outside of the race being exciting, the entire rest of the weekend was a complete disaster. And what is a politician going to look at and go, well, okay, one of the races went off without a hitch, but the other one and all the concerts got canceled. You sold us on all this stuff and it didn't happen. Like, that's what they're going to look at. They don't care that Shane Van Gisbergen won this race. They don't care about that story. And I'm curious if they care about the TV rating or not.
Yeah. But I mean, it would be cool if they just had one street race every year, maybe on July 4th, maybe to keep the date and just see if you can move around cities and do that year to year. That would be cool.
It would be a night. Like, you know this, Kyle, how difficult
you would have
it is.
To actually do that, you would have to probably run Chicago another year and start planning for the third year, like now. And like plan on where you're going next, like 2 or 3 years ahead of schedule every time.
You're NASCAR, you're not the Olympics. You have pull, but you don't. I mean, you can't. You're gonna run out of cities.
Yeah,
like that's
then you go back. It's like the Super Bowl.
That's what I agree with. If like, let's say, because of the Chicago race, I think the NASCAR Chicago race, the Cup Series Chicago race, was a success. Okay, cool. Earned a second year, sure. But the minute that race is 120 degree, like, Fahrenheit temperature, and it's single file spread out street course race. Because here's the other thing, like, again, this race didn't have a notebook. It was not only a street course, but it was raining. Like, this was conditions that we've never seen NASCAR Cup Series cars race in. But what has happened to the road courses, generally speaking, for NASCAR? The teams and the drivers have figured them out. We don't get Shane Van Gisbergen wins in the Project 91 car at like the Indy road course. That wouldn't happen. And I hope I'm stepping in it, by the way. That would be cool if it happened. But like generally speaking, the regular guys are going to win the road courses now because it's just not valuable to put a Boris Said type in because of the points and how it all works in NASCAR now. I just let's let Chicago be its own thing for a couple of years and see how the race plays out. Because remember when everyone was so high on the Roval? Nobody gives a damn about the Roval anymore. Nobody cares. And that's because they oversaturated it and did too much with it immediately without going, this was really successful for the first year, but what about year 2, 3, 4? And what happens if we add Rovals at Indy and to Daytona and start talking about doing it at Atlanta and all this other, nonsense? I mean, I don't know. That's where they're going to run into trouble, is that everybody and their brother just immediately thinks this is freaking going to print money everywhere else in the country. And if we look at street courses in literally any other series, they are just run-of-the-mill races. It's very hard to create a crown jewel. They potentially have the Long Beach of the North going on here in Chicago. They could build this up into an event. Imagine if they added some support races like Trans Am or like IMSA. Well, they are going to add IMSA, but I think they have a chance to really build something cool in Chicago. But if they do it 5 times a year, it's just not going to have the same impact.
Yeah. That's all I got.
Well, what about the effect of the TV rating? That's the big thing. Like, because this was the highest NASCAR TV rating since 2017 Homestead, which everyone will remember was the Carl Edwards retirement race, which pissed a lot of people off. And that's, what's funny to look back on that and realize that TV number was like so high. And then I wonder what the impact of that race playing out the way that it did impacted TV viewership for years to come. I mean, what do you think NASCAR is going to do with this? I mean, what do you think? Because NBC is going to push this to the moon. What do you think NBC is going to be the driving force behind more street courses rather than NASCAR themselves? Do you think NASCAR themselves is going to do that unprovoked? Or do you think NBC is going to be like, yes, do more? Good, Anakin, good.
I feel like NBC is less like pushy on NASCAR than Fox is. I feel like Fox is really the one out of the two that will basically push NASCAR. Yeah, that I feel that way.
So
I feel like
there's a couple of examples. Even this year, I didn't realize that they extended practice at Nashville, and I guess Chicago as well, because NBC wanted more TV time. So I don't know. And I think NBC was a big driving force behind the stages, to be honest with you. I don't know. I have to go look at the I'd have to go look at the quotes from back in the day, but like the stages and NBC line up pretty closely with that.
I just think of like the Bristol dirt race and how badly Fox wanted a dirt race, and the fact that it has to be on Bristol. It's not freaking Knox. It's not a freaking Eldora. That makes me mad. I just haven't heard, I guess, or know of an instance of NBC, maybe Nashville, but I don't know, like a race that NBC is just went like, you got to do this and you got to go here, you got to do.
Well, they went balls to the wall in the promotion of Chicago. I think I said in one of my videos, it was the most promotion I've seen for a race from NBC that hasn't been the Indianapolis 500. I mean, they just pushed it to the freaking moon.
Well, I don't know. It would be the most NASCAR thing, but I would hope and just want that they have learned their lesson at this point, like you said, on the Roval, and the amount of road courses they're doing. I think Denny Hamlin makes a good point. I mean, I made it a point on Twitter a few weeks ago where I said, like, people complain about the schedule right now and like the fact that we have a street race and a dirt race and all these things. Like, there's a lot of talk about the schedule, but like back in my day, we ran 2 races at New Hampshire, and we ran 2 races at Pocono. We ran like all these races they're getting rid of to do, the street course and all these, like the Roval. It's like Man, I watch New Hampshire twice a year, and I was excited about it. Like, what are you guys complaining about now? Like, what?
Well, I mean, like, here's the thing. I watched this may be a tangent, and I don't know where this is going, but we're gonna find out. I recently rewatched the 2002 Brickyard,
Mm.
which was an NBC race, by the way. And also, I just want to, if anyone from NBC is watching this, please bring back the Countdown to Green theme. That thing freaking slaps, like low key banger, whatever that Countdown to Green theme was. That was so freaking good. But um, that was a relatively boring race. Uh, it was exciting though. I mean, like everyone talks about that being a Bill Elliott runaway, and it was. But there was always a guy who was challenging him, whether it was Tony Stewart, whether it was Dale Jarrett, whether it was Rusty Wallace at the end of the race. The race was always in question until the very end when Bill finally got around Rusty Wallace. And you'll never guess what NASCAR did. With Bill Elliott running away from the with the lead, clearly going to win the Brickyard 400, they throw a debris caution with 10 laps to go. And there's a restart, and Bill runs away again and wins the race. It's like, why'd they do that? And we know why they did that, because NASCAR has always been the same. But I remember watching that race as a kid at home. I think that was the last Brickyard my family went to. Unfortunately, I didn't even get to go to a Brickyard until 2014, believe it or not, although my family had tickets from 94 to 2002. And in fact, I went to the Indy 500 in 2002. So why they didn't take me to the Brickyard, I have no idea. Maybe they really wanted to bird up and really get hammered. But I, the big takeaway I have from the NBC coverage of the 2002 Brickyard is they really did a good job of like making the event feel big. They treated the Brickyard 400 with a huge amount of gravitas. And I felt that while it wasn't quite as good a quality of broadcast as the 2002 Brickyard, I thought that NBC did a very good job of covering the streets of Chicago. I think there's mixed feelings, particularly from the pit reporters about Mike Bagley. It looked like Marty Snyder wanted to go up there and rip his head off at one point. But I think Mike Bagley is the best part of the NBC broadcast. And it's not even like Dale Jr.'s like, okay, Dale Jr.'s close. Dale Jr. is a close second, but Mike Bagley, number one with a bullet. I mean, he was such a professional, kept everyone up on the race, and also corrected himself when he started saying Shane Van Gisbergen's race name wrong. He corrected it after he got it wrong once and never said it wrong again the whole rest of the race. So
how do you feel about the NBC radio style broadcast? Because I kind of mixed on it, because I think I brought it up yesterday, and I guarantee I'm freaking right, because everybody memed NBC for this, but there was a Mid-Ohio Xfinity race where there was like a spin in the middle of the screen, and the commentators just didn't talk about it. Like it just and the producers missed it.
Ooh,
and
that's unfortunate.
I realized that yesterday when I was watching the race, and because I don't know if anyone else found humor in this, but like when Kyle Busch crashed and like Jeff Burton's mid-send is like, oh, we got a car in the wall. Like when they just cut in, it's so funny. But I realized it. I'm like, yeah, they're like in the corner, so they see this all happening. So the producer doesn't miss it. The guy switching the cameras doesn't miss what's going on. The commentator can just go in there and get it.
That's what I like about it. That's what I like about it.
I don't know. I feel like it's kind of lazy. I feel like it's kind of like you get a lot of stuff, but it's like, yeah, you're just taking it off the one guy's back to do his job.
I would agree with that. I would agree that it seems like a lot of times there's a distinct lack of racing knowledge in the switcher role at a race. It seems like a lot of times, whether the director or the producer, whoever's calling the shots, is missing some of the action. It almost always seems to be this way. But I think with the TV, or sorry, the radio calls, as well as Dale Jr. himself, he does this on oval tracks all the time. You ever tell? Like Dale Jr. will like send subtle messages when he's watching something like out the window instead of watching on TV. And he'll go, wow, there's a really good battle for 21st. We need to be like on that right now. You know, it's like I appreciate that Dale Jr. does that.
Clint Boyer does that.
Clint Boyer does it. And these guys have the clout to do it. Like, I feel like in the past, guys would kind of be afraid to like start calling the shots from the booth, because I'm sure that comes up in production meetings.
Have you seen the clip of Clint Boyer this year where he calls like a battle and he's like, oh, we better get a camera on that?
Yeah,
And then they
I think I was
they
watching
switch
the race
away,
where he did that.
and he like you can hear him like audibly like throw a
Oh,
notebook or
yeah.
something. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I do remember that. Yeah, but you know what? I would rather have guys with some freaking passion in the booth than
Yeah.
the 2009 Indy 500, for example, just to throw a race broadcast.
Yeah.
Like, I would rather have a guy who screams and hollers too much, like Dale Jr., who knows what the hell he's talking about and watch the damn race and understand what the hell's going on, than somebody boring. Like, 99 times out of 99 times, uh, without any question, in my opinion. All right, is that enough NASCAR talk? I think we've talked enough
Yeah.
NASCAR.
Yeah.
It's time for you to get me in trouble. This is a great segment, and then we'll go into the super chats.
Well,
Kyle has had a month and a half to try to get me in trouble, so if he
well,
doesn't get me
Garsh,
in trouble on this one, it's gonna be very disappointing.
well, it's hard to get. There's gonna be one of these episodes where I am gonna have something spicy that you will actually get flamed on for. But for now, we're gonna stick because
Save that for the winner. We
we've
need
been
content.
because we knock on wood or not because sometimes it's but we have not been like really getting in trouble lately. Like maybe it's because we haven't had the podcast in a while, but like
I don't
mean,
think the podcast is. I think the podcast, if anything, has helped.
yeah, yeah, because we can just
Because I will say this. I've noticed this, and maybe I'm just looking too far into things, but I don't think I'm wrong here. Is that I've noticed the chat is not nearly as active as it should be for the 400 people that are watching it, and a lot of times, and I've seen the texts from you people in the industry who text me during this show. I see it. There's a lot of industry people that watch this show, in my opinion, which is scary, but it's also gratifying. So hi to everybody. I'm glad you don't think I'm quite as much of a dickwad as you used to. So thank you for that.
I actually got in trouble this weekend.
What'd you do?
In trouble. Did
Oh,
you see
yeah,
it on
somebody
Twitter?
yelled at you. Yeah.
Yeah, that was annoying. Like I was just sitting there shooting photos for fun. Like I'm not working this weekend. I'm having a good time. I'm having a few drinks, hanging out with my family. But I shot photos on Friday because it's fun. Even though it's my job to like shoot video and photos, I still think it's fun. I'm gonna do it. Well, without a photo vest, I can't get up next to the fence, right? Like I can't do that, and I didn't do that. But a security so I was standing by the where the fans stand, where there's like the little fence and then the racing fence, and
Yep.
the security guard walks up. He's like, because the red flag for Elio spinning directly in front of me, by the way, happened, and he walks up and he's like, I think I just saw you over that fence by the fence. I'm like, yeah, I was actually shooting through the fence. I wasn't over the fence. And he's like, no, you were over there. I think I saw you. I'm like, you think you saw me?
Oh,
if you're
God.
if you're gonna come at me, bottom line, I was actually
Yeah.
not breaking any rules. And what he was really mad about was that I had my dirt bike, and he's like, well, you can't motorize vehicles, even though I'm surrounded by golf carts. So he wanted me to move that over the fence. He wanted me to move my dirt bike over somewhere else and not have a motorized vehicle in that way. And he didn't actually, because he didn't actually see me over the fence because I wasn't over the fence. So he kind of dropped that and yelled at me for something else. But bottom line is, if you're going to come at me and yell at me for something, don't start the sentence with I think.
Yeah.
Say
Yeah.
I saw you. And then I'm
Right.
going to say, well, you didn't because it didn't happen. But and I thought about it too. I was like, if I had done that, by the time he saw me, wouldn't I have still have been climbing, saw me and walked over to me? Wouldn't I have been climbing back over the fence? Like, how would I have
Well,
done that quickly?
yes. I have 2 points that are completely unrelated to what you've said. I think you got screwed, first of all.
Well, I didn't actually I didn't get kicked out or anything.
Well, yeah. Well, dude, that would be like them kicking me out of IMS. I don't think they can have the capability to kick you out
Yeah.
of Ohio at this point. You're kind of a part of the furniture, whether you like it or not. So I'm going to be a bit of a snitch here, and I have that's why I'm not saying any names or faces, or I won't even say where I was on the track. But I definitely saw some people jump over the fence at Le Mans and get way closer to the track than I would have ever wanted to go. I'm like, I wonder if I'm ever gonna. I should show these people the Peter Dumbreck crash or the Andre Lauderer crash before they do this. The other question I would have is, I discovered at Sebring this year that they have around the track Sears fence. They have Sears fence lining Sebring. Sebring is that old that they have Sears fence. So my question to you is, does Mid-Ohio have a Sears fence too?
No, that thing's fallen over. That thing is not a Sears fence. If it was, it would probably be still standing strong. That's another thing that Mid-Ohio needs to freaking replace. But like, I can show you, it made me so mad because I was like, it's like when you have those like arguments with people and then you think retrospectively, it's like, oh, I should have said this, should have. Like, I had all the photos on my camera that had like the fence in the photo. And I was like, man, like, if I had jumped the fence, would there still be fence in my photos, dude? Like, I can show you every single one. There's fence in the freaking photo.
You should
Like,
have just
dude.
thrown the cart chaser vest on and jumped over the fence and just
Yeah.
been like, oh, yeah, I'm credentialed media.
Oh, yeah. Man, I was like, that was annoying. But not really. Well, maybe. Depends on what you say. But we're talking about NASCAR. When the Brickyard 400 comes back on the oval, when? That's the first part.
All right, well, we're breaking news.
What are we gonna have to do to make it a special event? Is it just gonna be the Brickyard as it was, or are we gonna do like some duels or something? What do you want to have?
Run it on the downtown city streets. God bless. I would love to see duels. You know what? Oh, do I want to say this? Yeah, I'll say it. I don't know how you'd pull this off, but God bless America. I'd love to see it. You know what? Throw the next gen cars out. Let's just not do. Let's not do it with the next gen cars. I got an idea. Just hear me out. All these Cup teams run pseudo Xfinity programs anyway. Let's just have them all enter every piece of Xfinity equipment that's out there. Let's get an 80-car Brickyard 400 entry list again and do what they should have done in 1994 and have a 40-car consolation race and take the top 5 and put them in the Brickyard 400. That's what I would do. Find a way to get as many freaking entries into that. I don't care if you have to run a multi-class race with Xfinity and trucks and Cup. Have a way to have like enough cars that there's actually a threat that somebody goes home. I mean,
the teams wouldn't like it, but to that point, what I would also say is, why don't we have them run the Xfinity chassis, but then the bodies, you just give them measurements and say, do whatever the hell you want.
That's how you end up with, if you've ever seen like the Syracuse 200 from the 1980s where somebody brought a ground effects car and then the Bodines had to like fabricate a ground effects car in their like shop in the pit lane. If you hear fireworks, I apologize for that. But I don't know. I don't know what you could do to the Brickyard 400. I mean, I think what IMS is probably going to say, if and when they wink, wink, bring it back. I think that they're probably just going to say to an extent like, well, we're bringing the Brickyard back, everybody. It's the 30th anniversary of the Brickyard 400. Yay. And that's going to be it. I mean, I just don't think IMS has like the pull that they used to really do a unique event. You know what's funny? I don't remember where I read this, but I was recently reading an article about the 94 Brickyard. And apparently people were speculating that there would be a 3 abreast start in the 94 Brickyard. Imagine that for a second. Maybe that's what they should do. Maybe do a 3. If you can't change anything else, maybe do a 3 wide start. I don't know what you, because like what I expect to happen with the next gen car at IMS is there's going to be too much dirty air and it's going to look a lot like the Indy 500 where maybe they'll run closer, but it's probably going to be single file a lot of the time. And I don't think they're going to have the same like draft effect to pass each other and repass each other like they do in the 500. So it could be like a worse version of the Indy 500.
Problem is like what Denny Hamlin preaches about. Like, I haven't seen. I'll probably watch it on my drive to Pittsburgh or listen to it on my drive to Pittsburgh. But Denny Hamlin's podcast for a few episodes has just been him complaining about tires. So I know so much thanks to Denny Hamlin on how bad Goodyear is. But like, and that's not a knock. It's a great podcast. But like, man, he really hates Goodyear. But like.
Then he should, you know what? He should bring
but-
back Hoosier Tires. Let's have a tire war. He can qualify on the pole for the 30th Brickyard 400.
But like Indy, the problem is going to be the tires are not going to be good enough, because I feel like the next gen car has gotten better on like intermediates or like tracks that, like I would say Kansas is probably a better race than it was, tracks like that. Indy would probably need a good enough tire to where you could run like a second lane and like actually build momentum around like a middle lane. Like, because the problem is like they're not going to have enough suck down the straightaways to do Indy style, passes down the inside at the end of the straightaways. Probably not, unless they. I mean, the other thing too that I just kind of remember is like, this was a point I made when the Brickyard went away, was like 2019 was not a bad race. Like the year or 2018.
Which
I think.
oh God, they all run together.
Yeah, the one that Kozlowski won on the the pass on the last lap. That was not a bad race.
Was that the race that Jimmy was blowing up going into the corner?
That was 17. Like 17 was crazy too. 17 was crazy for a different reason, but like
what year did Trevor Bayne hit the end of the pit wall? Or was that was Clint Boyer?
That was 2017. That was the same year.
Why is 2017 the only Brickyard that's sticking out in my? I remember the Brad Keselowski, Denny Hamlin thing.
Yeah,
I thought that was 2020.
No, that was 18. 2020 was the year that Kevin Harvick won.
That's right.
He won in 2019 and 20.
That's right.
Yeah, he won in the
and he's a 3-time winner at the Brickyard now. Yeah. Because he won in 05.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. He won in 03.
03.
Yeah. I know.
I need to brush up on my Brickyard history.
I was at the Brickyard probably more years than you did, honestly.
Oh, for sure. Almost certainly. Because I only went about,
I've been
to all the road course races, but that doesn't mean anything.
I went to 11, 12, and 19. You might have been to more.
Well, I went to 3 in a row. I went to 14, 15, 16.
Yeah, you went to the worst ones.
Oh yeah, and they were also like literally as hot as the Sahara Desert. I remember the year Kyle Busch won. Like you could walk 20 feet, and I was in better shape than I am now. You would walk like 20 feet and like want to pass out. It was that freaking hot. I don't know how like the Grammy the granny panty people with like the Jeff Gordon boxers on. I don't know how like the 80-year-old women who were looking for Jeff Gordon's autograph in like little rascal scooters. I don't know how they lived. I really don't. I mean, and that's what's so crazy. What we've seen now with the IndyCar NASCAR doubleheader is that between those 2 days, you probably have the same size of crowd, but the crowds are completely, you do not see the same face twice.
Yeah.
On those, they are
you noticed that
crowds.
If you went to the Indy 500, which, okay, first, the point I was going to make is that
I did indeed go to the Indy 500.
Yeah, the first point, back to the first point before I go to the next one is like 2019, whatever year Kozlowski won, like on like the last lap finish, like the Brickyard had good finishes, and I think it was with the high downforce package.
It was overtime though, wasn't it? It wasn't actually like a legitimate deal.
Yeah, but like that's not a concern to people who aren't us.
Well, yeah, that's for sure. Don't get me started on the Indy 500. I finally put
we
that
look at a race as being bad when it's like overtime and like a bunch of bull crap goes down. A lot of fans nowadays will look at that and they'll say, "Man, that was fantastic."
The NASCAR fans would have thought it was the greatest thing ever if Justin Haley had just not braked at turn 1 and just stuffed Shane Van Gisbergen into the freaking catch fence. If he would have put him over that. Remember that race that we did with Colton Herta that one time where we all flipping over the wall at the Roval? That's what people would have loved to see Justin Haley do to Shane Van Gisbergen so that Chase Elliott won that race. That would have been the wet dream NASCAR finish to the Chicago street race. That would have been what all the fans would have come to see. That would have been the finish that the fans came. Sorry, I'm talking about the Indy 500 again. I apologize. Everybody who was 3 Miller Lights in would have been cheering, bro. And that's all we want at the Indy. The Indy 5, who cares about the other 105 years of history? Nobody cares. The fans are just coming for a finish. That's all. 2 laps out of 5. Okay. All right. I'm done. I got it. Got it out of my system. No, I didn't.
But that was a funny thing. If you went to the Indy 500 every year and the Brickyard 400, Brickyard 400 crowd was obviously smaller, but it's like, yeah, there was like the 3 or 4.
There was more people there than for the road course.
There's
I
like
will-
the
I
3
will-
or 4 like faces that you'd recognize from May. Because think about May. Think about May. If you've never been to the whole month, like there are people every year. You may not know their
guy
names.
with the wheelbarrow, the gun guy. Yeah, you see him.
Yeah, there's people that you may not know their names. You might have never met them, but like you see their face and you're like, it's good to be back. We are back. And
yeah, especially
besides
this year
those
because
people-
a lot of the faces we hadn't seen like 3 years.
Oh, yeah. But like the Brickyard crowd, the NASCAR fans, like they were not at the Indy 500. Like and it's crazy.
Right. Yeah.
It's crazy that now
They were in Charlotte for sure.
Now we have 2 days in a row back to back where you can really notice where you have the NASCAR fans and the IndyCar fans both coming on separate days.
They're a different breed.
They're not coming to both, you know. They're not coming
unlike
to
the
both.
crazy people like us who come to both.
Yeah.
Ay.
I guess the IndyCar fans, you know, when they go, if you go on Saturday and you don't go on Sunday, I will give you props for being smart because on Saturday you do get to see 2 races.
True. Yeah. But the problem is what happens even then is that people leave after the IndyCar race and people are coming in for like that happens. Like the IndyCar race had a smaller crowd than the Xfinity race, and that's literally because more people showed up to watch the Xfinity race.
I think I am getting you.
Indy.
I think I am getting you in trouble because now you're pointing out that the IndyCar NASCAR doubleheader is just a complete failure.
Well, but I think here's the good. They've come to that conclusion. They know that. You know what? We're going to enjoy Milwaukee next year, or Argentina. You know, whichever one they decide to add. I hope it's Milwaukee or it's both. Both would be great.
Are we going to Argentina?
I don't know. I there's too much smoke to think it's not happening, but I don't know if I want to go to Argentina. That's an awfully if I man, France was tough as it is. I don't. What do they speak Spanish in Argentina, right?
I don't know any Spanish, but I have an Augustine Canapino hat, so they'd be nice to us.
Well,
they'd be nice to us.
Well, they might be. I haven't said anything bad about Augustine Canapino, so hopefully. By the way, in Assetto Corsa or Automobilista 2, they have both of the Argentine tracks that they're looking at racing at. One of them's pretty modern, and the other one's an old Formula One track, which is not a bad track either. But I can't remember exactly what it's called. Should we do super chats before I get in trouble?
Yeah. Well, I just feel like with the love of Augustine Canapino, with the love of, you know, Automobilistas, that's Brazilian, isn't it?
They're Brazilian, but they have.
South American. Yeah. It's South American.
It's
with
South
all the
American,
love of Automobilista that we have, I feel like we would fit in very well with the Argentinians. I feel like our relations with the Argentinians would be very great, and I would love to go to Argentina.
I would just wear a lot of green. If the tourism board would like to pay, Michel Vaillant and the Argentinian tourism board, bring David Land there. We'll take it to the top.
I think the only way that we'd probably anger them is if we called it soccer instead of football. But
I called it football.
What you have to wear. You have to wear the Argentinian jersey, like.
No, football kit. It's called kit, not jersey. It's a kit. It's kit. It's football kit. And by the way, every single Augustine Canapino reference I made in May because he was driving a football kitted out car, I called it football. So the Argentinians that were watching, and I put that car in the thumbnail, so I know all you Argentinians watched that freaking starting grid. I said football kit. I may have accidentally put Catherine Legg in a Chevy, but I made sure to say football kit right. Which I did correct, by the way, the next time we showed the starting grid in the video. So I did pick up on the one mistake. Well, I also said that that Illinois born and bred Ed Carpenter was Hoosier born and bred. But those were like and I got Danica. I forgot Danica ran the Brickyard, the Daytona 500 and the Indy 500 in the same year. I gave that credit to Kurt Busch. So shout out to Danica Patrick. As if she needs a shout out. All right, let's look at the super chats for today. There's a lot of them, naturally. Henry Callahan was on pole position today. He says SVG wins on debut. NASCAR needs to go to Surfers Paradise and doubleheader with IndyCar. I take back everything I said about street courses oversaturation in NASCAR. If it means we get Surfers Paradise back, I'm all for it. I understand that the supercars race at Surfers Paradise, but God bless America. I would love the Indy cars to go back to Surfers Paradise. I don't know if I would like the 18-hour plane ride, but I would definitely make an effort to go there.
Well, we'd have to get over it because I mean, whether you like it or not, Australia is going to happen. You know, we're gonna go to Bathurst or something. We're not gonna live the rest of our lives and not go to Australia.
Yeah, I would like to go to Bathurst. I'm really, before we get back to super chats, I'm really struggling right now because the Nürburgring 24 hours it doesn't clash with the Indy 500 this year or next year. Oh no. Oh,
that was a thing this year. That was a thing.
Yeah.
Story time. The Nürburgring 24 was happening on qualifying weekend this year.
Yeah.
And we got back and it was like 11 and I turned it on David's TV and then I went back to go on the phone and I came back and David's just enthralled with this race.
Yeah.
And he said, screw you because I have to go to bed. And any other weekend, I would be having so much fun right now.
Yeah, that was true. I was so tired. I was like falling asleep on my chair, but I was watching this Nürburgring 24 hours. And that race just looks it's so pure. It's so pure and it's such like a nerd race.
Yeah.
I'm just sitting there going, they have they're running GT3 cars, which are allegedly BOP'd, but they have an open tire formula. You can just bring whatever tires you want and run on. I'm just sitting there just like in Nirvana, just going, this is awesome. There's an Opel out there. That's awesome.
Didn't the Opel crash? I think the Opel crash.
No, it was like it was the Skoda. It was
there was
like
two other crashes you told me about, and a safety truck broke down. So yeah, Nürburgring's all types of.
Yeah, the Nürburgring. By the way, just again to strengthen our international relationships, if there are any Germans watching, for the love of God, try to petition your local government to have that race in June, like the week before Le Mans. That would work out just perfectly for everybody. You could do Indy, Nürburgring, and Le Mans 3 weeks in a row. Come on, guys. Help me out a little bit here. Help me out. Let's actually try to finish the super chats. That was super chat number 1. Taurus, who absolutely was making it rain in the super chats today, said, Cub made a splash in Chicago by racing in a place that's traditionally not associated with them. Is that something even IndyCar is capable of doing now?
They tried with Boston.
Yeah, they tried. Yeah, they did try with Boston. I mean, they've made efforts. Argentina would fit that bill. Argentina, let's be honest. I don't know if it would make an impression here, but it would probably make an impression in Argentina. So I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I know they've gone to Argentina before. They actually ran an oval track in Argentina, if you can believe it. But I don't know. I
hope once again, I hope Argentina happens. Because I will tell you,
Milwaukee I can drive to. I can't drive to Argentina.
Yeah. But they came out in the second weekend of May, the qualifying weekend. The Agustin Canapino diecasts, jerseys, sizes small through large, gone. Sold out. See ya. Never gonna see you again. So
they'll make more.
So he is popular. Just putting that out
there. Yeah. Oh, definitely. Augustine Canapino is absolutely popular. That's why everybody kind of figured out the YouTube meta there for a couple of early weeks where you just put Augustine Canapino in the thumbnail and you get 30,000 views. Colbert says, which is kind of funny because I'm pretty sure that's supposed to say Colbert like Stephen Colbert. So very clever, Colbert. Going to be crazy when the Pacers win it all, the Colts win it all, and Connor Daly wins the Indy 500 next year. from your mouth to God's ears, Colbert. What? Actually, you know what? I'll be honest. As much as I am becoming, I fell out of love with the Pacers for a little while. I'm trying to get back into the Pacers, but I will say this: the Pacers, like going for a championship, is the worst thing that could happen to the Indy 500 because the stupid NBA playoffs go on for way too long. And if the Pacers are making a legitimate run, bye bye qualifying crowd.
Yeah.
Baby, bye bye infield Indy 500 crowd because everybody's going to be glued to their TV watching the Pacers. So, as much as I like the Pacers and want them to succeed, it hurts the Indy 500. So, sorry. The Colts, on the other hand, freaking go for it.
Good luck.
Now, this being said, I will say this, and this is a very interesting point that I want to make, and I've always wanted to make, and I guess I'll say it here and maybe in another video someday, is that I think it's very interesting that the IndyCar split and the Peyton Manning era of the NFL were very, very closely aligned in Indianapolis. And I honestly wonder how much of a negative impact Peyton Manning's Colts had on IndyCar fandom in the city of Indianapolis. That's just a thought I've always had. If you have the sports fandom kind of get upsetty spaghetti at something, and then something else comes along that really, you can't even imagine. They almost called school off on Colts play, like the day after Colts playoff games. It was so such a cultural thing to watch the Colts in the Peyton Manning era here in Indy. So I've always been curious about that because those two eras were so closely aligned that I wonder how much the Colts being good took away from IndyCar fandom. I've always been interested in that. Taurus says, actually hits us with a couple super chats, says, Dave, if one wanted to go to an endurance race for the first time, which is more accessible, Rolex 24, Petite Le Mans, or the Sebring 12 Hours? So I've been to all three. I've been to all three as a fan, and I've been to all three as media. I would say you probably have the most fun at Petite Le Mans.
Yeah.
I think.
I thought you were probably going to say Sebring, honestly.
No, it's not accessible.
Sebring's the one I've never been to, but Petite Le Mans, I've been to the Rolex, I've been to Watkins Glen, I've been to Petite. Petite is my favorite endurance race, period. I wish it was I wish Petite was a 24. I wish Petite just went on forever. I love Petite Le Mans.
Well,
but it is. Listen, I was thinking about Petite. I was hoping Petite. I was hoping about.
You're not gonna let me answer this question, by the way.
Oh, we'll answer it now.
Keep going. No. Go ahead and finish it. Go ahead.
I was thinking about Petite. This is hopefully gonna help with the question, by the way. I was hoping that Petite was gonna get brought up in this episode because I remembered that we had an idea last year. Do you remember our idea last year to do a Petite this year?
Is it gonna get me in trouble?
No.
Because we'd really book in the IMSA season with that.
No. Remember when you went there and camped in a tent?
Yeah, that wasn't as fun as you think it would be.
Yeah. No, we definitely need to go to Petite one of these years and camp.
I would do the RV. I've done an RV once at Petite, and I've done a tent at Petite. And the year I did a tent, it was 2013. It was the last ALMS race. It was so freaking cold, and it
rained.
Didn't it rain? Yeah, it was cold and it rained. And while the race itself was amazing, and I love I do love current IMSA. I am indeed a race fan, but the ALMS, that just did it for me. I love that. So to answer the question, accessibility, it's Petite Le Mans. It's close to big cities and enough lodging. Rolex 24 is accessible from a lodging perspective, but it's a 24-hour race. I even struggled at Le Mans to pay attention, stay awake, all those things during Le Mans. And I was absolutely, 100% committed to that race. Daytona is a tough one because it's 24 hours. And if you can get a hotel room close to the track, the Rolex isn't bad, but the big problem with Daytona in the road course is sightlines. That's a similar problem at Sebring, not nearly as bad as at Daytona, but the big problem with Sebring is you're going to have a tough time finding lodging, meaning hotels or Airbnbs. That's the biggest problem with Sebring. It is out in the middle of the BFE. And so while I love Sebring, God bless America, I'm so disappointed that WEC is not coming back with IMSA. What a great event that was, the Super Sebring. I guess we'll have to catch him in Coda and then Indianapolis 2 years from now. But I think I still think I love Sebring, but like in terms of accessibility, in terms of a guaranteed good first experience at a sports car race, Petit Le Mans every day of the week, in my opinion.
What do you mean about sightlines at Daytona?
I don't think it's not a road course. It's a
Yeah,
roval.
I mean it's like it's. I
Are
would say
you
it's
really going to argue with me that Road Atlanta doesn't have better
no.
views?
I
Okay.
was just view. It was just the. I agree with you 1,000%. Road
Okay.
Atlanta's the
Okay.
one, but like Daytona, like the thing about Daytona that reaches out to me is, I guess, like your point, like it's not the best view of a racetrack. But what I appreciate about Daytona is like I can go up in the grandstands on the outside and see the entire track. Like it's the only like endurance race, and like I guess it's not really a road course, but it's the only place I can just go somewhere and just see literally the entire infield road course. Anything happens, I can see it. Like I think that's
That's
kind of neat.
okay. That's okay. I mean, I don't, but
Like,
it's
if I wanna
not.
go up and get close to the cars, I can go walk around the infield and do my thing and, see the banking and see all those things, but
I
then,
I
when
like
I get a little, it's middle of the night, I just go in the middle of the grandstands, and there's the entire track for me that I can just kinda sit at and relax.
I like the Rolex. I love the Rolex. I don't have a problem with the Rolex, but like it's not a proper road course. And that's what makes it unique as an
Yeah.
event. But if you want the best experience, Petit's
Yeah.
second to none from my perspective. And it's just long enough, but just short enough that a casual sports car fan can get the experience, but not be like overwhelmed. Like 10 hours is like the perfect length for
I
like
wish
a
it was
casual.
I wish it was longer, man.
I mean, I do too. You know what? I just
want
wish
that
they would.
race.
I wish they'd go back to the 1,000 mile distance.
Mm,
It used to the race distance used to be 1,000 miles or 10 hours, whichever came first. Now it's just 10 hours. They changed it when they got a watch sponsor a couple of years ago when it was the Tudor Sports Car Championship. The watch company was like, "Well, we need to have all the races be timed," so they went away from a distance race. I would like to see them go back to a distance race because I thought it was kind of cool to have the history books to see how quickly through the years sports car racing would progress and how quickly you could finish 1,000 miles. But we can't have nice things. Um, Taras also says, following in Gainbridge's footsteps, will BitNile become the official cryptocurrency and exchange of IMS? Is there an official crypto coin or
well,
exchange?
they could be. I guess
They
that's the
they
point.
might be right now. I, you know what? Oh God, this will get me in trouble. I'm going to be very careful about how I say this. But I was thinking about this today because I was filling up my gas tank and I was filling up with Shell fuel, which
Oh,
is the official fuel supplier of IndyCar. And I was thinking to myself, they won the Indy 500 this year as a sponsor. And I'm looking around this gas station going, there's no Joseph Newgarden like anything anywhere at this gas station in Indiana when the Shell car won the Indy 500 for the first time ever. And I understand like that doesn't really happen anymore. But I think a big part of that is like, why would Shell have to brag? Any car is a Shell car now in the Indy 500 because there isn't a competitor against them. I wonder with the exclusive deals sometimes does that not encourage competition outside, not just inside racing, but outside of racing, meaning like a willingness to promote, hey, the Shell car won the freaking Indy 500 this year. That's kind of a big deal. I don't know.
yeah.
That's a thought. It's
It
a
would be
thought that went through
cool.
my head today.
'Cause it's like there's no reason to, because they don't like Mobile One's not an IndyCar, so why does Shell have to rub it in their face? You know?
Yeah.
Why do they have to go and make it known that they beat the other oils? Because there's not another
Because
car,
just
not
there's
another oil
not.
sponsoring.
And they're not allowed to. They're literally not allowed to. You can't just bring Mobile One in if you wanted to. They wouldn't allow it. So, yeah, that's a little disappointing. But it's just the way of the world now, I guess. And so to answer your question, BitNile could very well be the official crypto coin of IMS right now. I don't know, because if they were the exclusive partner, they wouldn't promote it.
Yeah.
Napa Racing fan. Oh, sorry. Will Yearbanks says IndyCar should do a Daytona road course night race on July 4th. That will never happen. Not because IndyCars can't go to Daytona, or even that Daytona wouldn't let them do that, but a Daytona IndyCar race on July 4th, competing against the NASCAR Chicago race. No way in hell NASCAR would ever allow that to happen. No freaking way. Zero chance. Zero chance.
Do you think Indy cars could happen at Daytona? I know that's like an age-old question. I think they could. They probably have to add like another something on the back straight.
No, they'd be all right. I think they'd be all right on the back straight. I think
I would
they'd
be
probably
worried.
run they'd slow them down before they get to the tri-oval though. They'd add that chicane back.
I would be more worried about how much speed those cars. Well, I guess they do it in IMSA, but it's different in open wheels where cars can go flying easier, and how fastly they would go through the bus stop.
Oh, they would go through the bus stop fast, wouldn't they?
Yeah. See,
Yeah.
that's what I'm saying. They probably added like something, like a few. They have enough space there on the back straight of Daytona though. They could add like a cool set of corners on the inside there or something.
Yeah. I don't know. Because when they tested there, they were running cars that were so slow on road courses. I don't know. It almost would be more effort than it's worth to do it. And again, I think NASCAR wouldn't, like, NASCAR's smart enough that they wouldn't let IndyCar. I think the only way that was going to happen was in a split scenario. Like, they would have let the IRL race there and had, I think maybe that was part of the reason why they let them do that test in 07, 06 and 07, was because Champ Car was so weak. Maybe NASCAR wanted to try to accelerate one of those series dying. I mean, I think that's a possibility. So let's say they don't get back together in 08. Maybe a Daytona race does happen in 08 if Champ Car is still around. I don't know. I'm curious about where that would have ended up going. But I think a big mistake, honestly, for IndyCar racing was the fact that they let the Brickyard 400 happen in the first place, because I think that legitimized NASCAR to open wheel fans. And then the minute they split, because in a lot of ways, the open wheel split was funded by the Brickyard 400. All of a sudden, the Indy 500 takes a massive dive in credibility, and the Brickyard 400 is already swooping in there. And if you don't like the Brickyard, well, hey, Formula One's coming in 4 years. Yeah, it was it. So not saying that that's the same scenario for an IndyCar race at Daytona, but like, I just don't think NASCAR would let that happen, especially now. I think it's too legitimate of a competitor at this point. That's my opinion. But of course, IndyCar racing let NASCAR race there at the height of IndyCar, and then we saw how that goes. So I don't know, maybe. That's just my take. Could be a bad take. Napa Racing Fan 927 says, how will Peacock Indy Toronto do for viewership? Well, it ain't gonna be good.
I should have asked you that to get you in trouble.
Well, I mean, I don't think I don't think it's like what do you expect? What do you? I think it was like the number was like 40 or 50,000 last year. Is that bad? I don't know. I like it when I get 50,000 views on YouTube, but for an IndyCar race where you've got literally probably $100 million of total spend to do to put on a race like the Indy Toronto, between the teams and the city and Green Savory and the series. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know how that, and looking forward to the streaming future of racing, because that's a thing that's going to happen, whether we like it or not. How does that change the sport?
I mean, what's a normal TV rating? A little under a million?
I would say about, if it's on NBC, it's a million, million one, million two, generally speaking.
So 50,000 versus a normal on
Yeah.
NBC million.
Yeah. Yeah. When you put it that way, It doesn't sound very good, does it? But I would say that too, like when you hear like I struggle sometimes to believe TV numbers. Uh because even the TV rating aggregators will tell you like there are peaks and valleys to how many people are actually watching at one given time in a TV rating scenario. So like when you hear that 4.5 million people watched Chicago, how many of those 4.5 million watched the entire race? You know, and how many people were invested in the race, or how many people just fell asleep to the golf that was on before? You know what I mean? Like that's the tough thing about TV ratings is that they're not calculated like we do have a lot of analytics on the internet. You know, you can look at a tweet and know exactly how many people have looked at that. You can look at a YouTube video and know exactly how many people have looked. You don't need Nielsen to tell you how many people have watched a David Land video. You don't need Nielsen to tell you how many people have watched Formula One highlights, you know? So like the it's harder to hide on the internet. And what streaming does, it allows you to at least hide how many people have watched it if you control the proprietary platform. And maybe that's why we don't see races as many like major races streaming free here on YouTube, because you're totally exposed to how many people actually decided to tune in and watch your race. I don't know. That's just a thought. Let's actually try to finish the super chats because we're still getting so many of these, which we appreciate, by the way. I'm not complaining about it, but I do want to try to get through them. F in the chat. My high
you lost your
spending.
fan.
My fan went away. It is actually getting kind of toasty in here, so maybe I'll fan myself. My high spending suggestion for Mid Ohio is to bank a couple of different turns, a la Zandvoort. Oh, my battery died in my live thing. Oh, that's unfortunate. Yeah. What do you think about that, Kyle? Mr. Mid Ohio.
Like which ones? I mean, a lot of them are really tight. Where if you do that, it'd be tough. I mean, maybe you could do that in like the final corner and just cut the carousel to where you come out of Thunder Valley and then it just swoops in, and then turn one is just high speed. Maybe turn one would be a passing zone at that point. I don't know, but you'd totally ruin the carousel and Thunder Valley. Like, but I guess it's just tough to I don't have the answer, because anything that I say, I'm just going to go back on it because I love everything about that track, you know? So if it's like ripping the Band-Aid off. I'd rather them just rip the Band-Aid in front of me rather than me come up with a solution that I'm just going to hate because I love that track. But I think something needs to happen. Like there's one thing, there's just something you can do it without changing turns 2 or turn 4. But there's something.
You just run it at Cleveland. A quick note for the end of the stream, and yes, I did hear this rumor. I guess we can talk about it since it's being brought up. New Track Record, which is a Twitter account, I believe it's a podcast as well, says that Michael Shank Racing will run Tom Blomqvist and a current Ganassi driver as their two full-time drivers, with Elio driving the 500 next year. So, okay. So I've definitely heard Elio. There's some things I can't say. The thing that I do know is that Elio will be driving the 500 next year in a third car for Shank. I believe that's for sure going to happen. I was surprised. I mean, people had told me that it was going to happen, but I didn't believe them, and I should have. So whoever told me that, and you know who you are, eat your cake. Told me that Pagano was not coming back, which I was a bit surprised to hear that. But that rumor would seem to suggest that that is true. And the long-standing rumor as well has been that Tom Blomqvist would drive one of the Indy cars for Meyer Shank Racing. In fact, there was some speculation for a little while that he would run a third car this year at some point for Meyer Shank Racing. Obviously, I'm beating around the bush on something, which is the current Ganassi driver as one of the 2 full-time drivers. I'll put it this way. I don't think it's Alex Palou or Scott Dixon. So let's fill in the blanks. Who do we think that probably is? I would say Meyer-Shank Racing would look pretty Swedish in that situation.
Well, at those odds, if it's not Palou or Dixon, then his name's Marcus.
I think that's a good way of saying it. I think that's a good way of saying it. Now here's the thing about Marcus Ericsson is that he's had, I believe.
But what if it's Marcus Armstrong?
Well, it could be Marcus Armstrong. I'm just saying, Marcus Armstrong, he's a rookie and he's looked pretty good at times. Meyer-Shank Racing could be looking to get young, but all I know is that Marcus Armstrong sure does look like somebody who Chip Ganassi wants to keep on his team. And Marcus Ericsson, we've heard perhaps is not going to stay there. And I do know that Michael Andretti has been curious, very, very curious about Marcus Ericsson, possibly even to the point of offering him something. And even if he couldn't end up on the Andretti team, it would make some sense if he went to Shank, because that would put him in the Andretti family and also keep him in a Honda, which in my opinion, again, this is something that I'm purely speculating on, but generally speaking, when we look at Honda drivers, when a driver wins an Indy 500 for Honda, they're pretty much Honda wants to keep them forever. Now they weren't able to keep Alexander Rossi, but generally speaking, you win an Indy 500 in a Honda wants you forever. So I would generally think that this would be a favorable solution if Marcus Ericsson did end up at Meyer-Shank Racing, because then he would also be in a Honda and wouldn't be going to like McLaren and driving a Chevy, which, by the way, I think a McLaren, I know Zach Brown made some comments about potentially hiring Marcus Ericsson away from Arrow McLaren, but looking at that team, they're not going to expand to a 4th car, and the 3rd seat maybe would be Alex Palou, maybe not. And if not, at some point, has Felix Rosenqvist earned the ability to stay again? He's looked pretty strong this year. Sure, he's had some bad luck. Some of that has been self-inflicted, but we know the team around him loves him. So I don't know. It's going to be an interesting. So I'll tell you this about silly season with IndyCar is I think there's going to be more people in places that we have not seen them before than people that are returning to seats that we've seen them in previously next year. I don't know.
It's going to get silly.
Oh, it's going to be silly. Alex Ibarra, 25, says, Shano good. Oh, thank you for the $2. I don't know what that means. Napa Racing fan says, Milwaukee 2024 return. Maybe, probably. Replaces an Iowa race, ? I would say no. If it replaced a race, it would likely replace the second Indy road course, in my humble opinion. And that's all the super chats. We got through it. We got through
this in under 3 hours. That's incredible.
I'm surprised that we did that, because I thought this was going to be like a 4-hour stream, and we somehow got it through. But as you guys know, you can find the podcast on Apple and Spotify and Google and all your favorite podcasting platforms. So I actually remembered to plug it this time. I hope I'll remember to plug it next time. Thanks everybody for sticking around. We have still 284 people watching on what is a holiday night here on July 3rd. Happy July 4th to everybody who celebrates here in the United States. Looking forward to, I don't know if it's going to be a day off for me, but I'm looking forward to hearing my entire neighborhood get blown up for the next 2 days. I don't know. What do you think, Kyle?
I think if you live in the UK, enjoy going to work tomorrow, baby.
What's a kilometer? Oh, geez. We have caused so many international incidents. Oh, boy. All the Parisians will hate us. Argentinians, the Germans.
No, the Argentinas. The
Argentinas?
Good. I said Argentinians.
Tinians.
Okay, now they're gonna be mad at us. We
Now they're
had
mad.
good relations
Now they're
with the
mad.
Argentines. Man, well, troubles in international waters, I guess.
Trouble. We got a car in the wall. This is going off the rails. By the way, if you ever wondered what happens, I guess I'll bow tie everything to go back to the month of May for just a second. If you ever wonder what happens at the end of the month of May, our brains just get broken and we just start like talking like Dale Jr. and talking like other famous celebrities in the racing community. We hit the gritty all over the house. We say, "You're out of here." I mean, it is our like lack of sleep deprivation in May leads to some of I wish we could film it, but unfortunately Twitter probably wouldn't like it, so we can't. But it would make for a great like MTV vlog someday
Yeah.
of the absolute chaos that is the sleep deprivation of the month of May. So
We
I
all
hope you guys
become we all become pretty good at impersonating Dave Calabro. I'll say that too. I'll put that out there. I think
I
I think
cannot
our
comment on that.
impression we're pretty decent at impressions, I think.
Oh
I don't
yeah.
know.
We practice them too much.
Yeah.
That's the problem. Before we get into any more trouble today, thank you guys all for watching. We appreciate your viewership, and we will see you in the next podcast.